Love and redemption. The bitter dawn of 40, the candle flickered on the worn-out mat, its weak flame fighting against the Lagos darkness that crept through the cracks in the walls. Kelechi Okoro sat cross-legged, staring at the single puff-puff resting on a chipped plate, one sputtering candle stuck into its soft center. It was his 40th birthday cake. "Happy birthday to me," he whispered to the empty room, his voice swallowed by the silence. The year was 2020, but to Kelechi, every year since he had left his village in Imo State had been the same, a relentless grind of disappointment and diminishing hope. The COVID-19 pandemic had ravaged economies and taken lives, but Kelechi had been suffering from a different kind of virus long before coronavirus arrived. On these shores, it was called failure, and it had been eating away at him for 2 decades. He looked around his single room in the heart of Ajangunal, that sprawling, noisy, chaotic neighborhood that Lagos forgot. The walls were painted a sickly shade of green that had long begun to peel, revealing the dark patches of mold underneath. Water stains crawled from the ceiling corners like map lines leading to nowhere. A single wooden bed stood against one wall, its mattress so thin and worn that Kelechi could feel the wooden slats through it when he slept. But he didn't sleep on the bed anymore. The mattress had developed a colony of bed bugs that made sleep impossible. So he slept on the mat on the floor, the same mat that now served as his birthday seat. The room had one small window covered with a torn curtain that once was blue but had faded to a nondescript gray. Through it, the sounds of Ajangunal poured in like water from a broken pipe, generators coughing and sputtering, fellas' music blaring from a nearby beer parlor, women shouting at stubborn children, the constant honking of Danfo buses fighting for space on the narrow roads. Ajangunal never slept. It didn't have the luxury of sleep. Sleep was for people who could afford to rest, and in Ajangunal, nobody could afford anything. Kelechi's gaze fell on the pile of unwashed clothes in the corner. They had been there for 2 weeks. He had no money to buy soap, no energy to wash them in the communal tap outside, no hope that washing them would change anything. They smelled of yesterday's sweat and today's despair, and they had become a monument to his failure. A cockroach scurried across the floor, and Kelechi watched it with detached interest. Even the cockroach had somewhere to go. Even the cockroach had purpose. What was his purpose? At 40, he should be surrounded by children, by a wife, by the fruits of his labor. Instead, he was sitting on a mat, talking to a candle, sharing his birthday with a cockroach. His mind drifted back to Imo State, to the boy he had been, little Kelechi with the big dreams. He could still see himself clearly 10 years old, sitting under the mango tree behind his father's house, drawing on the back of his school exercise books. He didn't draw cars or football players like the other children. He drew buildings, skyscrapers that touched the clouds with intricate details on every floor, bridges that spanned vast rivers, mansions with swimming pools and gardens. "You see this one?" he would announce to anyone who cared to listen, holding up his latest creation. "When I grow up, I will build houses like this. I will be a famous architect. I will drive a Mercedes and marry a beautiful woman, and I will take my parents to Mecca every year, every year." The other children had laughed at his big dreams. Kelechi the dreamer, they called him, but his teachers had patted his head and said, "Work hard, my son. With this kind of talent, you will go far." His parents had beamed with pride, already spending his future riches in their imaginations. His mother would tell the neighbors, "My son is going to be somebody. Just wait and see." They had sacrificed everything for his education. His father, a subsistence farmer, had sold half his yam harvest every year to pay school fees. His mother had walked miles to the market to trade in cassava, returning home after dark with swollen feet and aching bones. They had believed in him with the fierce, unquestioning faith of parents who saw their child as their only hope for a better future, and Kelechi had believed too. He had passed his exams, gained admission to the university to study architecture, and left for the city with stars in his eyes and his mother's prayers in his ears. But life had a wicked sense of humor. The university strike that lasted for 2 years had been the first blow. Then the death of his father, which shattered his mother's health and drained whatever savings the family had. Then the discovery that the architectural firm he had hoped to join only took people with connections, people whose fathers knew people, whose uncles sat on boards, whose last names opened doors. Kelechi Okoro from the village, with his village accent and his village clothes, could not get past the reception desk. The architect became a laborer. The man who drew blueprints now spent his days carrying headpans filled with cement, his back aching under the weight of other men's dreams. His English, broken and unpolished, chased him away from every interview. His clothes, frayed and faded, spoke before he could open his mouth. Sorry, we are not hiring, they would say, but their eyes said, you don't belong here. Now here he was, 40 years old, sitting on a mat watching a cockroach. Kelechi, you are a complete failure, he told himself, his voice barely audible above the noise outside. Your mates are building houses. Your mates have children in university. Shinadu, who sat next to you in primary school, is now a permanent secretary in the state government. Emeka, who couldn't even draw a straight line, owns 3 houses in Owerri. And you? You are 40 years old and sleeping on a mat like a small boy who just left his mother's house. He thought about the women he had tried to love. There had been a few over the years, kind women who saw past his empty pockets, who stayed for a while before the weight of his failure became too heavy for them to carry. The last one, Gozi, had left 2 years ago. She hadn't even said goodbye properly, just packed her things one morning. While he was at the site and disappeared, he had come home to find her side of the room empty, a note on the table that said simply, I'm tired, Kelechi. I'm very tired. He couldn't blame her. He was tired too. He had tried again after Gozi. His friend Oki had introduced him to a woman, a widow with 2 children who needed a man to help her. But when she met Kelechi and saw his situation, the single room, the empty pockets, the despair in his eyes, she had laughed. Not a cruel laugh, but a sad one. Oki, my friend, she had said, I need a man to help me carry my burden, not to add to it. This one, he needs help more than I do. The memory still stung. He had walked home that day with his tail between his legs, feeling smaller than the ants crawling on the roadside. A burden, that's what he was. A 40-year-old burden that no woman wanted to carry. Then there were the ones who didn't even bother being kind, the sharp girls with their weaving and their long nails who looked at him like he was something stuck to the bottom of their shoes. The one at the mama put just last month who had laughed loud enough for everyone to hear when he couldn't afford to buy her a bottle of Coke. Mama put, I know be charity organization, she had sneered. Old man like you, 40 years on earth, and you can't even buy a bottle of Coke? A beg, find your mate, find somebody way, get something. The other customers had laughed. The mama put woman had looked at him with pity. He had paid for his gari and left, the laughter following him like a curse. The candle was burning low now, the flame dancing desperately as if aware of its approaching end. Kelechi watched it, thinking about his own life, a flame that had once burned bright with promise, now sputtering toward darkness. He thought about his mother, still in the village, still waiting for her son to become somebody. She called him every month, her voice thin with age and hope. Kelechi, how far? Any good news? I'm praying for you, my son. God will not abandon you. He always told her things were fine, that he was making progress, that soon he would send her money. The lies tasted bitter on his tongue, but the truth would have killed her. He thought about his father, buried in the village cemetery with his dreams of seeing his son become a big man. What would his father think if he could see him now? Carrying headpans? Sleeping on a mat? Eating one puff for his 40th birthday? The tears came then, hot and sudden, streaming down his face before he could stop them. He didn't wipe them away. There was no one to see, no one to pretend for, just him and the dying candle and the cockroach that had found its way to the corner and stopped, as if waiting to see what this strange, weeping creature would do next. I'm sorry, Papa, he whispered to the darkness. I tried, I really tried. It just wasn't enough. The candle gave one last flicker and died, plunging the room into complete darkness. Kelechi sat there, invisible in the blackness, letting the tears fall. The noise of Ajin Gunnel continued outside generators, music, shouting, honking, but inside that small room there was only silence and sorrow and a man who had reached the end of himself. He didn't know how long he sat there, minutes, hours. Time had lost meaning. Eventually the tears stopped, leaving behind a hollow emptiness that was almost worse than the pain. He lay down on the mat, curling into himself like a child in the womb, and closed his eyes. Sleep, when it came, was dreamless. No skyscrapers, no success, no Mercedes, just darkness, deep and complete, like the darkness of the grave. When he woke the next morning, the sun was already high, its harsh light streaming through the torn curtain and falling across his face like an accusation. Another day, another chance to fail, another reminder that he was 40 years old and had nothing to show for it. He sat up slowly, his joints protesting the hard floor, the uneaten. Puff puff from last night sat on the chipped plate, stale and unappealing. He picked it up anyway and ate it mechanically, chewing without tasting. It was food. He needed food. Everything else was luxury. As he chewed, a thought crossed his mind, not a hopeful thought exactly, but a practical one. He needed to eat today. He needed money. The only way to get money was to find work. There was a new site somewhere in Acadia. He had heard a big project for some rich man. They were looking for laborers. The pay was small, but small was better than nothing. He stood up, stretched, and began his morning routine, a bucket of water from the communal tap, a quick wash with the last of his soap, the same worn clothes he had worn yesterday and the day before. As he left his room and stepped into the chaos of Agingunnel, the noise enveloped him like a familiar embrace. "Kelechi? Oya, come and buy bread." "Morning, Kelechi. How body? Kelechi, you dey go sight today?" He nodded and waved at his neighbors, the people who knew him not as a failure but as just another hustler trying to survive. In Agingunnel, everyone was hustling, everyone was struggling. His story was not unique. It was just another verse in the endless song of survival that played in this corner of Lagos. He walked toward the main road, toward the Danfo buses that would take him to Ikeja, toward another day of carrying headpans and mixing concrete. He didn't know that this day would be different. He didn't know that he was about to meet someone who would change everything. He didn't know about Mfon, but as he walked, his stomach growling with the hunger that never seemed to leave him these days, he passed a small kiosk by the roadside. A woman was there, frying something that smelled like heaven, puff puff, golden brown and crispy, the smell wafting toward him and making his mouth water. He had 5 naira in his pocket, just enough for one. He stopped. "Good morning, Ma," he said. "Give me 1 puff puff." The woman looked up, and for the first time Kelechi saw Mfon's face, round and kind, with eyes that seemed to see beyond his worn clothes and tired expression. She smiled, a warm, genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Good morning, oh," she replied. "Just one?" "Just one," he confirmed, handing over his last 5 naira. She dropped the puff puff into a small nylon bag and handed it to him. Their fingers touched briefly, and something passed between them, a connection so slight, so fleeting, that Kelechi almost missed it. But he didn't. He felt it deep in his chest, a tiny spark of warmth in the cold emptiness that had become his heart. "Thank you, Ma," he said, and continued walking toward the bus stop. Behind him, Mfon watched him go, wondering about the sadness in his eyes, the weight he carried on shoulders that were already bent from carrying physical loads. She didn't know his name yet, she didn't know his story, but something about him touched her, made her want to know more. She added 2 extra puff-puff balls to the batch. She was frying, telling herself it was for later, but deep down she knew she was saving them for him, for when he came back, and he would come back, she was sure of it. The bitter dawn of 40 had passed, and somewhere in the chaos of Agingunnel, a new day was beginning, not just for Lagos, but for Kelechi Okoro. He didn't know it yet, he couldn't see it yet, but the seeds of change had been planted, and they would grow in ways he could never imagine, all because of a puff-puff, all because of a woman who saw beyond the surface, all because sometimes when you've hit rock bottom, the only way left to go is up. Girl they called Mama Put. 2 weeks after his 40th birthday, Kelechi's stomach was growling with the ferocity of a wounded lion. He had not eaten properly in 3 days, surviving on gari and groundnut, stretching his last 500 naira like a rubber band. But today he needed something hot, something that would remind him he was still human. The site in Ikeja had not worked out. They had hired 10 laborers that day, and Kelechi had been the 11th in line. The supervisor had looked at his tired face, his worn clothes, and said, "Come back tomorrow, maybe tomorrow." But Kelechi knew tomorrow would be the same story. There were always more men than jobs. There were always younger, stronger men willing to work for less. So here he was, walking through the neighborhood with emptiness in his belly and despair in his heart, when the smell hit him. Puff, puff, hot, fresh, golden brown puff, puff, frying in oil and calling his name like a siren's song. He followed the smell like a man following a dream, and it led him back to the same kiosk he had passed. 2 weeks ago, the same woman was there, her round face glistening with sweat from the heat of the frying pot, her hands moving with practiced ease as she dropped balls of batter into the bubbling oil. "Good afternoon, Ma," Kelechi said, pulling out his last 5 naira note. Mfon looked up from her frying pot and recognition flickered in her eyes. "Ah, you again. The one way by one puff puff 2 weeks ago. How are you, oh?" Kelechi was surprised. She remembered him in a neighborhood where hundreds of people passed her kiosk every day. She had noticed him. "I day fine, Ma, just day manage, the usual?" she asked, smiling that warm smile he remembered. Kelechi nodded. "Just one, please." Mfon dropped one puff puff into a small nylon bag, then paused. She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw what everyone else probably saw but ignored. The hollow cheeks, the dull eyes, the way his clothes hung on a frame that had lost more weight than was healthy. This man was suffering. This man was hungry. She dropped 4 more puff puff balls into the bag. "Ah, Ma, I only pay for one," Kelechi said, trying to give back the bag. "I no get money for extra." Mfon waved her hand, the one not holding the frying spoon. No matter. You day always come, you day always greet well. Enjoy am, and stop calling me Ma. My name is Mfon." Kelechi looked at the bag, then at her. For the first time in weeks, someone had shown him kindness. Not pity, not charity, kindness. His eyes glistened, but he blinked the moisture away quickly. "Thank you, Mfon. God bless you." He started walking away, eager to find a quiet corner where he could eat his unexpected bounty in private. But Mfon's voice stopped him. "Wait, you no go chop here?" The puff puff sweet when hot hot. "Come, sit down. Rest small." Kelechi hesitated. He was not used to invitations. He was not used to people wanting his company. But something in Mfon's voice made him turn back. He sat on the low wooden bench beside her kiosk, the same bench where customers sometimes waited when business was heavy. He ate his puff puff slowly, savoring each bite, trying to make the pleasure last. Mfon continued frying, but her eyes kept drifting to him. There was something about this man that tugged at her heart. Maybe it was the sadness in his eyes. Maybe it was the way he ate his food like it was a precious gift, which to him it probably was. "You no get work?" she asked eventually. Kelechi swallowed his puff puff and shook his head. "I day try, but plenty people small work. Dem day always take the young boys, strong boys. Me, I don old, 40 years. Dem no want old man for sight." Mfon nodded thoughtfully. 40 no be old. My own father day work farm at 65. You just never meet correct person." Kelechi shrugged. "Maybe, maybe not. I don't tire to hope." They sat in silence for a while, the sounds of Gunnel filling the space between them. A Danfo bus honked loudly. A woman argued with a trader about the price of tomatoes. Children ran past, laughing and shouting. "Why you day always look so worried?" Mfon asked finally. "The other time when you come, you look the same way, like the whole world heavy for your head." The question hung in the air between them. Kelechi looked at his hands, rough, calloused, the hands of a laborer who had nothing to show for his labor. Then he looked at Mfon, at the genuine concern in her eyes, and something broke inside him. The words tumbled out before he could stop them. "I day 40, Mfon 40. I get nothing. No wife, no money, no future. My mates don build houses, get children for university. Me? I day carry load for sight like small boy. I come Lagos with dreams, big dreams. I wanted to be architect, build houses way touch sky. Now I day sleep for mat for one room. I day borrow money to eat. Women day laugh at me. Children way suppose call me uncle day pass me for road and no even greet." He paused, his voice cracking. "Sometimes I think say better make God just take me, at least for heaven, no be so suffering." Mfon listened without interrupting. She didn't offer empty platitudes or quick solutions. She just listened, her face soft with understanding. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. You know, she said slowly, people they look at me and they see one thing. They see fat, they see mama put, they see woman way no man go. Want because she too big. They call me names behind my back, I hear them. Mama put the fat woman who go marry her. But I no kill myself, I no let their words enter my head. She turned to face him fully. You know why? Because I no say my value no day my size, my value day inside me. I get hand, I get sense, I get heart. I fit work from morning till night and still smile. I fit build something from nothing, and one day one man go see me not my size, but me, and he go love me for who I be. Kelechi stared at her. In all his years of suffering, in all his years of feeling sorry for himself, he had never thought about it that way. He had been so focused on what he lacked, money, status, a wife, respect, that he had forgotten about what he still had, his hands, his sense, his heart. Your own go better, Kelechi, Mfon said. Softly, I believe am, but you must believe am too. You must wake up every morning and tell yourself, say today fit be the day. If you no believe for yourself, who go believe for you? Something shifted in Kelechi's chest. A tiny flame of hope, so small and fragile that a single breath could extinguish it, but a flame nonetheless. Someone believed in him. Someone who didn't know him from anywhere, who had no reason to be kind, was telling him that his story was not over. Thank you, Mfon, he said, and this time, he didn't try to hide the tears that filled his eyes. Thank you. From that day, Kelechi became a regular at Mfon's kiosk, not just for puff-puff, but for conversation, for hope, for the warmth of another human being who saw him not as a failure, but as a man with potential. He learned her story piece by piece during those quiet moments when business was slow and they could talk. Mfon was from Akwa Ibom State, the last of 6 children. Her father had died when she was 12, and her mother had struggled to raise the children alone. At 18, Mfon had come to Lagos to find work, to send money home, to make something of herself. I never go university, she told him one afternoon. My mama no get money for that. So I come Lagos, work for people kitchen, learn how to fry, how to cook, how to run small business. I save money small, buy my own pot, my own oil, my own flour. Now I get this kiosk, no be much, but be my own. Nobody give me anything, I work. For everything, Kelechi was humbled. Here was a woman with less education than him, fewer advantages, more obstacles, and she had built something, not a skyscraper maybe, but a business, a life, a reason to wake up every morning. How you do, Am? He asked. How you no give up? Mfon laughed, a rich, full laugh that came from somewhere deep inside. I give up plenty times I want to pack my things and go back to village. But every time something hold me, small progress, one customer way praise my puff-puff, one day way I sell everything and close early, one person way smile at me and say thank you. Those small things, they add up. They remind you say you day do something meaningful. Kelechi thought about his own life. What small things did he have? What progress had he made? For years he had been measuring himself against other people's achievements, against the dreams of his childhood, against an impossible standard of success. He had never stopped to appreciate the small victories, a day of work, a meal in his belly, a kind word from a stranger. You dey think too much, Mfon said, as if reading his mind. You dey look too far, look near, look today. What you fit do today, way go make tomorrow small better. It became their rhythm. Kelechi would come to the kiosk, sometimes to buy, sometimes just to sit. Mfon would fry and sell and chat with him between customers. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears, their regrets. They laughed together. They were silent together. They built something that neither of them had expected, a friendship that felt like family. One evening, as Kelechi helped her pack up for the night, Mfon asked him a question that would change everything. Kelechi, you get woman? He shook his head. No, who go want me? I get nothing. I no ask who go want you. I ask if you get woman. He looked at her, confused by the distinction. No, I no get woman. Mfon nodded slowly, then met his eyes directly. What about me? You fit want me? Kelechi's heart stopped, then started again, pounding like a drum. Mfon, I you be my friend, my only friend. I no want to spoil. You know, go spoil anything, she interrupted gently. I don't watch you for weeks now. I see how you day treat me. You know, day look at my body and laugh like other men. You know, day try to touch me or take advantage. You just day be there. You day listen. You day care. That kind thing. No common. She stepped closer to him. I be fat. Woman Kelechi, I know wet in people they say, but I also be woman with heart, with feelings, with love to give. I don't tire to give my love to people way no deserve am. Maybe I fit give am to you. Kelechi stood there, speechless. In all his years of dreaming about women, he had never dreamed of someone like Mfon. But standing here now, looking at her round face, her kind eyes, her gentle smile, he realized that his dreams had been shallow. He had wanted a woman who would look good on his arm, who would make other men envious, who would prove that he had arrived. But Mfon offered something deeper, companionship, understanding, love without conditions. I get nothing to offer you, he said, his voice rough with emotion. No money, no house, no future. Mfon smiled and took his hand. Her hand was warm, slightly damp from the day's work, but solid and real. You get yourself, you get your heart, you get time to give me, that is enough. The rest we go build together. That night Kelechi walked home in a daze. For the first time in years, someone wanted him, not for what he could provide, but for who he was. It felt strange, it felt terrifying, it felt like hope. The weeks that followed were the happiest Kelechi had known in Lagos. He and Mfon were together every day, mornings at her kiosk, evenings at his room, sharing meals, sharing stories, sharing dreams. Their love wasn't flashy or dramatic. It was quiet and steady, like a river that flows consistently rather than a flood that destroys everything in its path. Mfon introduced him to her world, the world of early mornings and late nights, of counting tiny profits and reinvesting every kobo, of building something from nothing through sheer determination. And Kelechi, in turn, opened his heart to her in ways he had never opened it to anyone. Tell me about your buildings, she said one night. Lying beside him on his mat, they had finally fixed the bed, working together to buy a new mattress. My buildings? The ones you used to draw, the ones way touch sky, tell me about them. So Kelechi told her. He described the skyscrapers of his childhood imagination, the glass facades that reflected the sun, the elegant curves, the rooftop gardens where people could sit and watch the city below. He told her about the bridges he had designed, spanning vast rivers, connecting communities. He told her about the houses, beautiful, comfortable houses where families could grow and thrive. Mfon listened with her whole attention, her eyes shining in the dim light. You know, she said when he finished, you still fit build them. Kelechi laughed bitterly. With what? With my hands way they carry cement? With my pocket way they empty? With your brain, Mfon said firmly. With your heart, the drawing day inside you, the knowledge day inside you. You just need chance to show am. And that chance, ego come. She sat up and looked at him seriously. But you must prepare for am. You must keep working, keep learning, keep believing. When the chance come, you must be ready. Kelechi looked at this woman, this fat woman that no man wanted, this puff seller that people mocked, and saw a wisdom that surpassed all the educated people he had ever met. She saw potential in him when everyone else saw only failure. She believed in him when he had stopped believing in himself. Mfon, he said quietly, I know. No weddin' I do to deserve you. She smiled and lay back down beside him. You be good man, Kelechi. That is enough. Now sleep. Tomorrow we go wake up early and face this life together. As Kelechi drifted off to sleep, the sounds of Ajahn Gunnel fading into background noise, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not happiness, that was too strong a word for the fragile emotion growing in his chest, but peace. The knowledge that whatever happened, he was not alone. Outside, the night continued its eternal cycle. Generators coughed and died. Dogs barked at shadows. Somewhere a baby cried and was comforted by its mother. And in a small room in the heart of the slum, a broken man and a dismissed woman held each other and dreamed of a future that no one else could see. The world had rejected them both, but they had found each other. And sometimes in a city as harsh as Lagos, that was enough. An unlikely alliance. 3 months had passed since Kelechi and Mfon became a couple, and in that time something remarkable had happened. Kelechi had begun to change. It wasn't dramatic, no sudden transformations, no overnight successes. It was small, almost imperceptible shifts in his spirit, like the gradual brightening of the sky before sunrise. He woke earlier now, not because he couldn't sleep, but because he wanted to see Mfon, to help her set up her kiosk, to carry the heavy bags of flour and beans from the market. He smiled more often, the lines on his face softening as hope began to smooth away the years of disappointment. The neighborhood noticed. The women who bought Puff Puff from Mfon's kiosk would nudge each other and whisper when Kelechi arrived. "See your boyfriend Don come, oh," they would tease, and Mfon would laugh, her round cheeks dimpling with pleasure. The men who gathered at the beer parlor in the evenings would nod at Kelechi with new respect. "That Mfon, she good woman, oh, she go take care of you." But it was the area boys, the young unemployed men who roamed the streets looking for trouble, who showed the most interest. They had always mocked Mfon from a distance, calling her mama put and making crude jokes about her size. But now that she had a man, even a man as down on his luck as Kelechi, something shifted. They stopped, laughing quite so loudly. They kept their comments to themselves. "See how dem dey behave now?" Mfon said one evening, nodding toward a group of area boys who had fallen silent as Kelechi approached. "Before, dem go dey shout mama put when you go reduce. But now, because you dey here, dem dey fear." Kelechi shook his head. "Dem no dey fear me. Dem just dey respect, say you get somebody." "Same thing," Mfon said, smiling. "When woman get man, the world treat her different. I know like am for that, but e be true." Kelechi thought about her words. In a world that had rejected them both, they had found a kind of protection in each other. Not physical protection. Kelechi was no fighter, and the area boys could easily overpower him if they chose. But the protection of presence, the protection of knowing that someone had your back, that someone would notice if you disappeared, that someone would ask questions if you were harmed. It was more than Kelechi had felt in years. Their daily routine became a rhythm that Kelechi came to cherish. He would wake at 4:30 a.m., earlier than he had ever woken as a laborer, and walk to Mfon's small room behind her kiosk. Together, they would grind the beans she had soaked overnight, mix the batter with just the right amount of sugar and salt, and prepare the oil for frying. By a.m., the first batch of Puff Puff was ready, and customers were already lining up. "You get hand for this work, oh," Mfon told him one morning, watching him shape perfect balls of batter with practiced ease. "You learn fast." Kelechi shrugged, but inside he glowed with pride. For years he had felt useless, a man without a purpose. Now he had a role. He was helping someone he loved. He was contributing. It was a small thing, but it felt enormous. After the morning rush, Kelechi would leave to look for work on the building sites. Mfon never asked him to stay, never made him feel guilty for leaving her to manage alone. "Go," she would say, "your own work day out there. When you find something, come and tell me. When you no find something, come and eat. Either way, I day here." Most days he found nothing. The construction industry in Lagos was unpredictable. Some days there were jobs, most days there weren't. But on the days he did find work, he threw himself into it with a new energy. He wasn't just carrying cement for strangers anymore. He was building skills, building experience, building toward a future. With Mfon, the site supervisors noticed the change in him. "Okoro, you dey work different now," one of them remarked. "Before, you dey move like dead man. Now you get life. Woman don change you, Abi?" Kelechi smiled but said nothing. Let them think what they wanted. The truth was too precious to share with strangers. In the evenings, he would return to Mfon's kiosk, tired but content. They would eat together whatever she had cooked, always enough for both of them, and talk about their days. She would tell him about the customers, the ones who paid on time and the ones who tried to run away without paying. He would tell her about the sites, the buildings taking shape, the skills he was learning. "You know," he said one night, "I day watch the masons, how they lay block, how they make sure the line's straight. I day learn small. Mfon's eyes lit up. "That's good. Very good. One day, you know, go just carry block. You go be the one to lay am." Kelechi laughed. "A beg Mfon, me way no go school for masonry. How I go just become mason." Same way I become puff puff seller, she replied firmly. I no go school for am. I just watch, I learn, I practice. You get eyes, you get hands, you get brain, you fit learn anything. Her belief in him was a constant, steady flame. On days when he felt like giving up, when rejection after rejection wore him down, she would hold his hand and remind him of who he was becoming. Not who he had been, who he was becoming. The old Kelechi, the one way day cry for Matt, he'd on go, she would say. The new Kelechi, the one way day wake up early, way day help me grind beans, way day learn masonry, that one, he get future. You hear me? He get future. And Kelechi would nod and the flame would burn a little brighter. One evening, as they were closing the kiosk, a commotion broke out nearby, shouting, the sound of things breaking, a woman's scream. Kelechi tensed, his instincts telling him to run, to hide, to protect himself. That was the old Kelechi, the one who had learned that getting involved in other people's problems only led to more problems. But before he could move, Mfon was already walking toward the noise. Mfon, where you day go? He called after her. Somebody day suffer, she replied without turning back. I go see if I fit help. He followed her, his heart pounding. Around the corner, they found a scene of chaos. 3 area boys were attacking an elderly woman, pushing her to the ground, trying to snatch her bag. The woman was screaming, clutching her belongings with desperate strength. Without hesitation, Mfon rushed forward. Una, stop. Leave that woman. The area boys turned, surprised to see a fat woman charging at them. For a moment they looked ready to attack her too, but then they saw Kelechi behind her, and something in his eyes, maybe the desperation of a man who would do anything to protect the woman he loved, made them hesitate. Oya, make we go, one of them muttered. This. One get madness. They fled into the darkness, leaving the elderly woman crumpled on the ground. Mfon helped her up, checking for injuries, murmuring words of comfort. The woman was shaking, her eyes wide with fear and gratitude. Thank you, my daughter, she whispered. Thank you. God will bless you. Kelechi stood watching, his heart full. This was the woman he loved. This was her heart, so big, so brave, so willing to risk herself for a stranger. In that moment, he understood something profound. Mfon's size wasn't a weakness to be overlooked. It was a physical manifestation of her capacity to love, to hold, to protect. She was large because she needed to be large enough to contain all the love in her heart. They walked the woman home, a small room not far from Mfon's kiosk. She lived alone, her children scattered across Nigeria, her husband long dead. She survived on the small pension her husband had left and the charity of neighbors. Every night I day pray for protection, she told them. Tonight God answer my prayer through Una. When they finally returned to Mfon's kiosk, it was past midnight. The oil had cooled in the frying pot. The remaining puff-puff had gone stale, but neither of them cared. You dey brave, Kelechi said quietly. Those boys, they fit do you something. Mfon shrugged. They fit try. But God day, and you day, I know day fear. Kelechi looked at her, this woman who had been dismissed by the world, and saw a warrior, a protector, a heart so large it could encompass the whole neighborhood. I love you, Mfon, he said, the words coming out before he could stop them. She looked at him, surprise flickering across her face, then warmth. I love you too, Kelechi. I done love you from the first day you come by puff-puff with your last 5 naira. The way you say thank you, the way you look at me like I be human being, I love you from that day. They held each other in the darkness of the closed kiosk. To people the world had rejected, building something beautiful from the rubble of their lives. The next morning, Kelechi woke with a new determination. He couldn't just be a laborer forever. He couldn't just rely on Mfon's small business. He needed to become more, to earn, more, to build something that would match the size of his love for her. He went to the site earlier than usual, arriving before the supervisors, before the other laborers. He found the head mason, a grizzled old man named Pa James who had been building houses since before Kelechi was born. Pa James, he said, I want to learn. I want to be mason. I go work for free. I go carry block, mix mortar, do anything, just teach me. Pa James looked at him with rheumy eyes, assessing, why now? Why you want learn? Kelechi thought about Mfon, about her bravery, about her belief in him. Because I get somebody way believe for me, I no want to disappoint am. Pa James nodded slowly. Love, E be good teacher. Okay, my son, you go learn, but e no go easy. You go suffer, you go make mistake, you go cry. But if you persevere, you go become Mason. That was the beginning. For the next 3 months, Kelechi worked double carrying loads like a laborer during the day, then staying after hours to learn from Pa James. He learned how to mix mortar to the perfect consistency, how to lay blocks so that the lines were straight, how to check for level, how to plaster walls smooth. His hands developed new calluses, his back ached in new places, but his heart grew stronger with each passing day. Mfon noticed the change in him. He came home later, more tired, but his eyes were brighter. He talked about angles and levels and foundations, words she didn't fully understand but loved to hear. You be real builder now, she said one night, pride evident in her voice. Small, small, he replied. I still get plenty to learn, but Pa James say I day do well, say I get gift for Mfon beamed. I told you, I always told you, your own go better. Their love deepened in those months. They were building more than a relationship. They were building a partnership, a team, a future. Mfon's business grew. She added buns to her menu, then akara, then chin-chin. Kelechi's skills grew. He could now lay blocks as well as any mason. And Pa James started paying him a small wage for his after-hours work. Life was still hard. Money was still tight. The room was still small. The mattress still thin. The future still uncertain. But they faced it together, and together made it bearable. Then one evening everything changed. Kelechi came home to find Mfon sitting outside her kiosk, her face troubled. A letter was clutched in her hand. What happened? He asked, sitting beside her. She handed him the letter. It was from her mother in Akwa Ibom. Her younger brother, the last child, had been admitted to the hospital. Typhoid, the bill was high. They needed money, and they needed it fast. I no get Mfon whispered. I give my mother everything way I saved last month. Now I get nothing. My brother go die because I no get money. Kelechi looked at the letter, then at Mfon's face, and felt something rise up in him. A determination he had never known, a fire that would not be quenched. Wait here, he said, and walked away before she could ask where he was going. He went to Pa James's house, a small room not far from the site. Pa James was surprised to see him so late, but he listened as Kelechi explained the situation. I need work, Kelechi said. Any kind of work, extra work. I go do anything. Pa James was quiet for a long moment, then he nodded. There is a man, big man, Chief Atukong. He de build new house for Ikeja, big house, duplex. He need workers, good workers. I go give you introduction, but the work hard, the pay small, but ego help. Kelechi took the introduction and went to the site the next morning. It was the biggest project he had ever seen, a sprawling duplex that would cover an entire compound with multiple floors, intricate designs, expensive finishes. The site supervisor looked at Pa James's introduction and nodded. Okoro, we need good finishers. You get experience? I get, Kelechi said, and for the first time he believed it. They put him to work that same day, not carrying loads, but finishing, plastering walls, straightening corners, preparing surfaces for painting. It was delicate work, precise work, the kind of work that required the eye he had been developing for months. He worked from sunrise to sunset, then went to Mfon's kiosk to help her close for the night. He gave her half his pay, watching her eyes fill with tears as she realized what he had done. You go work extra for me? She whispered. For us, he corrected. We dey build together. Your brother, nah, my brother. Your family, nah, my family. The money went to Akwa Ibom. The brother recovered, and Kelechi's reputation on the site grew. The supervisor noticed his work, his dedication, his eye for detail. Okoro, he said one day, you get something. You get gift for this work. Keep it up. Big things day ahead. Kelechi didn't know how big those things would be. He didn't know that Chief Atukong himself would soon walk through the nearly completed duplex and ask about the man who had done the finishing. He didn't know that a multi-million naira contract was waiting for him just around the corner. All he knew was that he had found his purpose. He had found his love, and together they were building something that no amount of money could ever buy, the site and the rich man. The Acacia duplex was unlike anything Kelechi had ever seen. From the moment he first walked onto that site, his heart had raced with a mixture of awe and disbelief. This was not just a building. This was a statement, a monument to wealth and power that would stand for generations, watching the chaotic city of Lagos evolve around it. The compound sprawled across what must have been an acre of prime acreage and land that cost more per square meter than Kelechi could earn in a lifetime of labor. The main building rose 3 stories high, not counting the penthouse level that was still under construction. Its facade was a mix of glass and imported stone, catching the sun and throwing it back at the world in brilliant flashes. Pillars flanked the grand entrance, each one carved with intricate designs that spoke of wealth beyond measure. Kelechi stood at the gate on his first morning, his mouth hanging open like a village boy seeing Lagos for the first time. Other laborers pushed past him, accustomed to such sights, but he couldn't move. He just stood there, taking it all in. This was what he had dreamed of as a child. This was what he had drawn on the back of his exercise books, buildings that touched the sky, that made people stop and stare, that announced to the world that someone had arrived. And now, decades later, he was going to help build one, not as an architect, not as the designer, but as a laborer. Still, it was something. Still, it was a step closer to the dreams that had never quite died. Okoro, you daydream or you day work? The site supervisor's voice cut through his reverie. Oya, come! Time na money? Kelechi hurried forward, joining the stream of workers flowing onto the site. The place was a small city in itself, masons, carpenters, iron benders, electricians, plumbers, laborers, all moving with purpose, all contributing to the creation of this magnificent structure. The noise was deafening, generators roaring, hammers pounding, mixers churning, men shouting, but beneath the chaos was order, a carefully choreographed dance of construction. Kelechi was assigned to the finishing team. His months of learning from Pa James had paid off. The supervisor had looked at his introduction, watched him plaster a small test wall, and nodded approvingly. You get I, he said. You go work with the finishers. But no forget, you still be laborer. When finishing work no day, go carry load like everybody, understood? Understood, sah, Kelechi replied, his heart swelling with pride. The finishing team was a small elite group within the larger workforce. They were the ones who came in after the masons had laid the blocks, after the electricians had run their wires, after the plumbers had fixed their pipes. They were the ones who made everything look beautiful, smoothing the walls, perfecting the corners, preparing surfaces for paint and tile. It was delicate work, precise work, work that required patience and skill and an eye for detail. Kelechi threw himself into it with everything he had. Every morning he was the first to arrive, sometimes beating even the supervisor. Every evening he was the last to leave, reluctant to stop when there was still so much to learn, so much to do. The lead finisher was a man named Alhaji Sani, a 50-year-old veteran who had been doing finishing work since before Kelechi learned to walk. He was a thin, weary man with a face like cracked leather and eyes that missed nothing. He spoke little, but when he spoke, everyone listened. You, he said to Kelechi on the third day, pointing a bony finger, you dey work hard, but hard work no enough. You must work smart. Watch me. And Kelechi watched. He watched how Alhaji Sani mixed his plaster to exactly the right consistency, not too wet, not too dry. He watched how he applied it to the wall in smooth, even strokes. How he used his trowel to create a surface so flat it looked like glass. He watched how he checked for level constantly, never assuming, always verifying. Why you dey check so much? Kelechi asked one day. Alhaji Sani looked at him with those piercing eyes. Because if wall no level, everything way go on top go de crooked. Tile, paint, cabinet, everything. The foundation of beauty in a straight line. You understand? Kelechi understood. It was the same with life, he thought. If the foundation wasn't right, if you didn't have the right values, the right relationships, the right purpose, everything you built on top would be crooked. Mfon was his foundation. She had made him straight when he was crooked. She had given him level when he was off. He worked harder after that conversation, not just with his hands, but with his mind. He asked questions constantly, absorbing knowledge like a sponge. The other workers mocked him sometimes, calling him teacher's pet and Alhaji's boy, but Kelechi didn't care. He was learning, he was growing, he was becoming. the weeks turned. In 2 months, the duplex grew from a skeleton of concrete and steel into a beautiful structure that drew gasps from passersby. Kelechi's hands became instruments of creation, his eye for detail sharpening with every wall he plastered, every corner he perfected. At night, he would return to Mfan's kiosk, exhausted but fulfilled. She would have food waiting, and she would listen as he described his day, the challenges, the triumphs, the small details that made the work meaningful. The Alhaji say I day improve, he told her one evening. Say I fit become finisher for real one day. No be just laborer. Mfan beamed, her round face glowing with pride. I told you. I always told you. You get gift, Kelechi. You just need chance to show em. She had her own news to share. Her business was growing. She had started selling not just puff and buns, but also fried yam and plantain chips. Her customer base had expanded beyond the immediate neighborhood. People came from other streets specifically to buy from her. One woman tell me say my puff sweet passed the one way. Dem day sell for lecky, she said, laughing. Lecky. Can you imagine? My puff way I day fry for Ajin Gunnel, dem day compare him with lecky. Kelechi laughed with her, but inside he was thinking, Lecky, the wealthy part of town. If Mfan's food could compete with Lecky quality, why was she still stuck in Ajin Gunnel? Why was she still selling from a small kiosk instead of a proper shop? The thought planted itself in his mind and began to grow, but there was no time to dwell on it. The duplex project was reaching its final stages, and the pressure was intensifying. Chief Atukong himself had started making unannounced visits, walking through the building with his entourage, pointing out flaws, demanding perfection. The first time Kelechi saw the chief, his heart nearly stopped. This was not just a rich man. This was wealth incarnate. Chief Atukong was a large man, not fat but solid, like a man who had eaten well all his life and exercised just enough to maintain his bulk. He wore an agbada of the finest Aso oak, the fabric shimmering with threads of gold. His fingers were heavy with rings, his neck circled by beads that probably cost more than Kelechi's entire family had earned in a generation. But it was his eyes that struck Kelechi most. They were sharp, intelligent, missing nothing. When the chief looked at a wall, he saw things that others missed. When he ran his hand over a surface, he could feel imperfections invisible to the naked eye. Who did this corner? He asked one day, pointing to a section of wall that Kelechi had just finished. Kelechi's heart froze. Had he made a mistake? Had his work been found wanting? I did saw, he said, stepping forward, his voice trembling slightly. Chief Atukong looked at him, then back at the corner. He ran his hand over it slowly, feeling the smooth transition from one wall to the next, the perfect 90-degree angle. Then he nodded. Good work, very good work. Who trained you? Kelechi pointed to Alhaji Sani, who stood nearby, his weathered face expressionless. Alhaji, you still get the magic, the chief said, laughing. You day turn laborers into masters. Alhaji Sani bowed slightly. The boy get gift, chief. I just show him the way. Chief Atukong looked at Kelechi again, really looked at him this time. What's your name, my son? Kelechi Okoro, sa. Kelechi, keep up the good work. I have a big project coming, very big. If this building finishes, well, I might have a place for you. He walked away, surrounded by his flunkies, leaving Kelechi standing there with his heart pounding and his head spinning. A big project, a place for him, the words echoed in his mind for the rest of the day. That night he told Mfan everything. She listened with wide eyes, squeezing his hand when he got to the part about the chief's promise. This is it, Kelechi, she whispered. This is the chance we've been praying for. No be promise yet, he cautioned. Be maybe, be if, but be something, she insisted. Be more than we had before. And if you continue to work hard, continue to do well, that maybe go become yes. She was right, of course. She was always right about these things. Kelechi worked harder than ever in the weeks that followed, determined to prove himself worthy of the chief's attention. He stayed late, came early, took on the most difficult tasks, helped other workers when they struggled. His reputation on the site grew until even the supervisor treated him with a measure of respect. The day of the final inspection arrived. Chief Atukang came with a full entourage: architects, engineers, interior designers, hangers-on. They walked through the duplex for hours, checking every detail, testing every fixture, examining every surface. The workers gathered at a respectful distance, waiting, hoping, praying. Finally, the chief emerged from the building. His face was unreadable. He walked slowly toward the group of workers, his eyes scanning their faces until they found Kelechi. "Kelechi Okoro," he said. "Come here." Kelechi walked forward on legs that felt like rubber. He stopped before the chief, his heart pounding so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. Chief Atukang looked at him for a long moment. Then he smiled a real smile, not the fake one he gave two business associates. "My son," he said, his voice booming across the compound, "I have built many houses, many in Lagos, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, even in London. But this one, the finishing is impeccable. You and Alhaji Sani have done a masterful job. The walls are smooth, the corners are true, the surfaces are perfect. This is the kind of quality I want in all my buildings." Kelechi's heart soared. "Thank you, Sa. Thank you very much." The chief held up a hand. "I am not finished. I am going into a big project, 150 estates, starting next month. We will build them across Lagos, then across Nigeria. I will need a site foreman, a man who can oversee quality, a man who can train others to work to this standard, someone with your eye for perfection." He paused, letting the words sink in. "The pay is good, very good. A multi-million naira contract over 2 years. Are you interested?" The world stopped. The noise of the site faded away. Kelechi felt his knees go weak, felt tears pricking at his eyes. A multi-million naira deal, site foreman, him, the broke 40-year-old from Ajangunal, the man who had been sleeping on him at just months ago, the failure that women laughed at. "Yes, Sa." He managed to stammer. "Yes, Sa. I am interested, Sa. I no go let you down, Sa. I swear." Chief Atukang laughed, a deep, rich sound. "I believe you, my son. I believe you. Report to my office next Monday. We will sign the papers and begin." He walked away, surrounded by his entourage, leaving Kelechi standing there in a daze. The other workers crowded around him, slapping his back, shaking his hand, offering congratulations. Alhaji Sani came forward and gripped his shoulder. "You deserve my son," he said quietly. "You work hard, you learn well. Now go and make us proud." Kelechi nodded, unable to speak. His mind was spinning with possibilities, with dreams, with visions of a future he had never dared to imagine. Multi-million naira, site foreman, 150 estates. He couldn't wait to tell Mfon. The poison of pride. The walk back to Ajangunal that evening was the longest walk of Kelechi's life. Not because the distance was far, but because his mind was traveling in so many directions at once. He rehearsed how he would tell Mfon, imagined her face lighting up with joy, pictured them celebrating together. But as he walked, something strange began to happen. The neighborhoods he passed through started to look different. The crowded streets, the makeshift stalls, the children playing in dirty gutters, it all seemed somehow beneath him now. He was going to be a site foreman, a multi-million naira man. What was he doing in a place like this? The thought crept into his mind like a thief in the night, and once it entered, it refused to leave. He thought about Mfon with her round body and her puff-puff kiosk, Mfon who had never been to school, who spoke with a thick accent, who wore the same simple wrappers day after day, Mfon who was, let's face it, fat. The word hit him like a slap. He had never thought of her that way before. He had seen her as beautiful, as kind, as his saving grace. But now, with the prospect of wealth and status dancing in his head, he saw her through different eyes, through the eyes of the world, through the eyes of the people he would soon be mingling with rich people, important people, people who would judge him by the woman on his arm. What would they say when they saw him with Mfon? Would they laugh behind his back? Would they whisper, "Look at that big man with the fat woman from the ghetto"? Would they question his taste, his judgment, his worth? The poison spread through his system, corrupting everything it touched. By the time he reached Ajangunal, the joy of his success had curdled into something ugly. He didn't go to Mfon's kiosk. He went straight to his room, lay down on his mat, and stared at the ceiling for hours. Mfon came looking for him when he didn't appear at the usual time. She knocked on his door, her voice warm with concern. Kelechi, you day inside? Why you no come for food? He opened the door but didn't invite her in. I tire, he said shortly. I just want to sleep. She looked at him, concern in her eyes. Something happened. You look different. Nothing happened. I just told you I tire. Leave me alone. He closed the door in her face. It was the first time he had ever done that. He heard her standing there for a long moment, then heard her footsteps retreating slowly. That night he didn't sleep. He lay awake, battling with himself, with the poison that was consuming him from within. Part of him knew he was being foolish, knew that Mfon was the best thing that had ever happened to him. But another part, the part that had dreamed of wealth and status since childhood, whispered that he deserved better, that he could have anyone now, that he didn't have to settle for a fat puff seller. The next day he went to the site and received more details about the contract. It was real. It was happening. Chief Atukong's assistant gave him papers to sign, explained the terms, shook his hand. Congratulations, Mr. Okoro. You have earned this. Mr. Okoro, not Kelechi, not Okoro the laborer. Mr. Okoro, the title felt good. It felt right. He didn't tell Mfon, not that day, not the next week. At first, he told himself he was waiting for the right moment. Then he told himself he wanted to surprise her. But deep down, where the truth lives, he knew the real reason. He was ashamed of her, ashamed to associate his new success with her old reality. He started coming home late, spending hours at beer parlors, imagining his new life. He bought new clothes, cheap imitations of the designer where he saw in magazines, and wore them around the neighborhood, hoping people would notice. He walked differently, held his head higher, spoke with a new authority. Mfon noticed the change. How could she not? The man who came to her kiosk every evening, who helped her pack up, who sat and talked with her for hours, that man had disappeared. In his place was a stranger who barely looked at her, who answered her questions with grunts, who seemed perpetually annoyed by her presence. Kelechi, wedding day happen? She asked one evening, catching his arm as he tried to walk past her kiosk. You day avoid me. You know day talk to me. I do something? He pulled his arm away roughly. You know do anything. I just stay busy. Big things day happen. You know go understand. Try me, she said softly. I may not get education, but I get ears. I get heart. I fit understand. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for a moment the old Kelechi surfaced. He saw the love in her eyes, the genuine concern, the patience that had never wavered. He almost told her, almost, but the poison was stronger. I no get time for this now, he snapped. I go talk to you later. He walked away, leaving her standing there with tears in her eyes. The secret couldn't stay hidden forever. One of his co-workers, a man with a big mouth and an even bigger envy, saw Mfon at her kiosk one evening. He had always resented Kelechi's rise, always felt that he deserved the foreman position more. Now he saw his chance to cause trouble. Mama Mfon. He called out, grinning maliciously. You know here? Your man on land big contract? Him be foreman now for Chief Atukong? Multi-million naira deal? Him go de chop life? Big man. Mfon's heart leaped with joy. Her Kelechi. Her belief in him had not been misplaced. She ignored the man's malicious tone, focused only on the wonderful news. She closed her kiosk early, bought a bottle of wine from the shop down the street, and hurried to Kelechi's room, eager to celebrate with him. He was there, lying on his mat, staring at the ceiling, when she burst in. With the wine and a huge smile, he sat up slowly. Kelechi, is it true? The man at the kiosk said, Yes, it is true, he interrupted, his voice flat. She rushed forward to embrace him, but he held up a hand, stopping her. She froze, confused. Kelechi, what in happen? This is good news. The best news? We should celebrate. He stood up, looking at her with cold eyes. Mfon, we need to talk. Okay, talk. I day listen. He took a deep breath. The words he was about to say would haunt him for the rest of his life, but at that moment, poisoned by pride and arrogance, they seemed necessary. Mfon, I can't be with you anymore. It's time for you to go. She blinked, not understanding. Go. Go where? Kelechi, what you day say? I'm saying it's over. I am a rich man now. I have a future. I have opportunities. I can't be with a fat woman like you anymore. You are not my type. You were never my type. I was just desperate and you were available. But now I can get anyone. Now I need a lady who is sleek, classy, sexy, a woman I can show off, not a woman who sells. Puff, puff by the road. The words hit her like physical blows. Emphone's face crumpled, her eyes filling with tears that spilled down her round cheeks. She looked at him, at this man she had loved, this man she had believed in when no one else did, this man she had fed and encouraged and held in his darkest moments. Kelechi, she whispered, her voice breaking, after everything, after all we shared? You go throw me away like this? I'm not throwing you away, I'm moving forward. You need to do the same. She stood there for a long moment, tears streaming down her face, clutching the bottle of wine she had bought to celebrate his success. Then slowly, with a dignity that would haunt him forever, she set the bottle down on his floor, turned and walked out of his life. She didn't scream, she didn't fight, she didn't beg, she simply walked away, leaving behind only the lingering smell of her fried snacks and the echo of her broken heart. Kelechi closed the door and leaned against it. He expected to feel relief. Instead, he felt nothing, an emptiness that no amount of money would ever fill. But he pushed the feeling away. He was a big man now. Big men didn't cry over fat women from Agingunnel. Big men moved on to bigger and better things. He had no idea how wrong he was. The poison of pride, the walk back to Agingunnel that evening was the longest walk of Kelechi's life, not because the distance was far he had walked from. Ikeja to Agingunnel countless times before, but because his mind was traveling in so many directions at once. The news from Chief Atukang still echoed in his ears, each repetition sending a fresh jolt of electricity through his body. Multi-million naira contract, site foreman, 150 estates. He rehearsed how he would tell Mfon. He imagined her face lighting up with joy, her round cheeks lifting in that beautiful smile, her eyes sparkling with tears of happiness. He pictured them celebrating together. Maybe he would buy her something nice, a new wrapper, some jewelry, a proper gift to show his appreciation for all she had done. They would sit in her kiosk, drink something sweet, and dream about the future they would build together. But as he walked, something strange began to happen. The neighborhoods he passed through started to look different. The crowded streets of Mushin, with their endless stalls selling everything from second-hand clothes to counterfeit electronics, suddenly they seemed shabby beneath him. The noise, the chaos, the smell of fried foods. Mixing with exhaust fumes, it all felt like something he was leaving behind. His feet carried him forward, but his mind was already elsewhere. He was imagining the places he would soon inhabit, the fancy offices in Victoria Island, the exclusive restaurants in Lekki, the parties where the elite of Lagos gathered to drink champagne and discuss business. He imagined himself walking into those places, dressed in sharp agbada or Italian suits, and everyone turning to look at him with respect. And then, unbidden, another image crept into his mind. Mfon in her simple wrapper and blouse, Mfon with her round body and her puff-puff kiosk, Mfon who had never been to school, who spoke with a thick accent, who laughed too loudly and ate with her hands and didn't know which fork to use for which course at a fancy restaurant. The image clashed violently with the fantasies of his new life. What would people say when they saw him with her? Would they laugh behind his back? Would they whisper, "Look at that big man with the fat woman from the ghetto"? Would they question his taste, his judgment, his worth? In a world where a man's status was often measured by the woman on his arm, what would Mfon say about him? The thought crept into his mind like a thief in the night, and once it entered, it refused to leave. He tried to push it away. This was Mfon, the woman who had saved him, the woman who had believed in him when no one else did. The woman who had fed him from her meager profits, who had held his hand in the darkness, who had told him your own go better when he had given up all hope. How could he even think such things about her? But the poison was insidious. It didn't attack directly. It whispered. It suggested. It planted seeds of doubt that grew into forests of arrogance. "She's not really your type," the poison whispered. "You settled for her because you had no options. But now you have options. Now you can have anyone. Why would you limit yourself to a fat puff-puff seller when the world is opening up before you? By the time Kelechi reached the familiar streets of Ajangunal, the poison had done its work. The neighborhood that had been his home for over a decade suddenly seemed foreign. The open gutters, the stray dogs, the children playing football with rolled-up plastic bags, it all looked like something he was meant to escape, not embrace. He didn't go to Mfan's kiosk. He couldn't face her, not yet, not with these thoughts swirling in his head. He went straight to his room, lay down on his mat, and stared at the ceiling for hours. The ceiling was cracked and stained like everything else in that room. Water leaks had created patterns that looked like maps of unknown countries. Kelechi traced them with his eyes, trying to lose himself in their imaginary geography, trying to escape the war raging inside his head. One part of him, the part that still remembered the taste of Mfan's puff-puff, the warmth of her hand, the comfort of her presence, knew that he was being foolish. This woman had loved him when he was nothing. She had seen potential in him when everyone else saw only failure. She had given him hope when he had none. How could he even consider throwing that away? But the other part, the part that had dreamed of wealth and status since childhood, that had imagined himself as a big man commanding respect, whispered that he deserved better, that he had earned the right to be choosy, that Mfon was a reminder of the man he used to be, not the man he was becoming. The battle raged for hours. Night fell. The sounds of Ajangunal continued outside, generators, music, arguments, laughter. Kelechi heard none of it. He was too deep in his own head, too consumed by the poison spreading through his soul. A knock came at his door. Mfan's voice, warm and concerned. "Kelechi, you dey inside? Why you no come for food?" He didn't move, didn't answer. Another knock, harder this time. "Kelechi, I dey worry wedding happen. You dey okay?" Slowly he rose from the mat and opened the door. Mfon stood there, her round face creased with worry, a covered bowl in her hands. The smell of pepper soup wafted from the bowl, his favorite, the one she made when he was tired or sad. "I cook pepper soup," she said, holding out the bowl. "You know, come for evening food, so I bring. Eat something." Kelechi looked at the bowl, then at her face. For a moment the old Kelechi surfaced. He saw the love in her eyes, the genuine concern, the patience that had never wavered. He almost took the bowl, almost pulled her inside, almost told her everything. But the poison was stronger. "I know hungry," he said shortly. "Keep her face fell, but she didn't give up. "Kelechi, wedding day happen. You day avoid me for days. You know day talk to me. I do something to offend you. Tell me I make right. You know do anything. I just day busy. Big things day happen. You know go understand." "Try me," she said softly, her eyes searching his face. "I may not get education, but I get ears. I get heart. I fit understand anything you tell me. You know that." He looked at her then, really looked at her. The pepper soup steamed in her hands. Her eyes glistened with unshed tears. Her body, round and warm and familiar, stood before him, offering comfort and love. And in that moment, Kelechi hated her for it, hated her for reminding him of who he had been, hated her for being the same while he was changing, hated her for loving him when he no longer wanted to be loved by someone like her. "I no get time for this now," he snapped, his voice harder than he intended. "I go talk to you later." He closed the door in her face. Through the thin wood, he heard her stand there for a long moment. Then he heard her footsteps retreating slowly, reluctantly. He didn't sleep that night. He lay on his mat, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to his own heartbeat and the distant sounds of the city. The pepper soup sat outside his door until morning, when a stray dog found it and licked the bowl clean. The next day, Kelechi went back to the site. Chief Atukong's assistant, a sharp young man named Mr. Adebayo, was waiting for him with papers to sign. "Congratulations, Mr. Okoro," Mr. Adebayo said, spreading the documents on a table. "This is the contract for the foreman position. 150 estates over 2 years base. Salary plus performance bonuses. You'll be responsible for quality control across all sites, training of workers, and reporting directly to Chief Atukong's project manager." Kelechi looked at the papers. The figures danced before his eyes, millions of naira, sums he had never dreamed of. His hand trembled as he picked up the pen. "Before you sign," Mr. Adebayo continued, "let me explain some things. This position comes with certain expectations. You'll be representing Chief Atukong's company. You'll Meet with contractors, suppliers, government officials. You'll attend meetings in places where presentation matters. Do you understand? Kelechi nodded, though he wasn't sure he fully understood. Good. Now the chief asked me to give you this. Mr. Adebayo handed him an envelope. Advance on your salary. Get yourself some proper clothes, a good haircut, polish your shoes. When you meet with important people, you need to look like you belong. Kelechi opened the envelope. His eyes widened. There was enough money there to pay his rent for a year, to buy new clothes, to eat well, to move out of Ajangunal. The thought struck him like lightning. He could move out of that single room with the cracked ceiling and the bed bugs. He could rent a proper apartment somewhere decent. He could start living like the big man he was becoming. He signed the papers with a flourish, his signature bold and confident. Mr. Okoro, site foreman, multi-millionaire man. That evening he didn't go back to Ajangunal. He went to a hotel in a cage, and not a fancy one, but clean and decent, with running water and electricity that stayed on all night. He paid for a week in advance, enjoying the feeling of peeling banknotes from the thick wad in his pocket. The room was simple but luxurious by his standards. A real bed with sheets that didn't have holes, a bathroom with a toilet that flushed and a shower that produced hot water, a television that actually worked. He sat on the bed, bouncing slightly to test the mattress, and laughed out loud. This was life. This was how he was meant to live. Over the next few days, Kelechi transformed himself. He found a tailor who made him 3 decent native outfits. He bought 2 pairs of good trousers and shirts from a second-hand market, carefully selecting items that looked almost new. He got a proper haircut, the kind that cost money and showed it. He even bought a pair of shoes real leather, not the plastic imitations he usually wore. When he looked in the mirror, he hardly recognized himself. The tired, defeated man was gone. In his place stood someone who looked like he belonged in better places. He didn't go back to Ajangunal. He didn't call him Fawn. He didn't even think about her, not really. Whenever her face tried to surface in his memory, he pushed it away. That was the old life. This was the new. The old life had no place here. 2 weeks passed. Kelechi threw himself into his new work with energy and dedication. He visited sites across Lagos, inspecting work, correcting errors, training workers. His eye for detail, honed during those months of learning from Alhaji Sani, served him well. Supervisors respected him. Workers listened to him. Chief Atukong's project manager, a no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Williams, praised his work. "You're doing well, Okoro," she told him after one site visit. "Keep it up." The money flowed in. He rented a small but decent apartment in a cage, and not lavish but clean and comfortable, a world away from Ajangunal. He bought furniture, a television, a small radio. He ate well, slept well, lived well, and he started going out. At first, it was just 2 local bars, places where working-class men gathered after hours to drink beer and talk football. But soon he discovered the clubs in Victoria Island, the lounges in Lekki, the parties where Lagos's elite gathered to see and be seen. The first time he walked into a proper club, his heart was pounding. The music was loud, the lights were low, and the women. The women were like nothing he had ever seen. Tall, slender, wrapped in expensive fabrics, their faces perfectly made up, their hair styled in ways that must have cost thousands. They moved through the crowd like gazelles, graceful and untouchable. Kelechi stood at the bar, nursing a bottle of beer that cost more than his previous day's wages, feeling like a fraud. These people would look at him and see right through his second-hand clothes and his village accent. They would know he didn't belong. But then something happened. A woman approached him. She was beautiful, light-skinned, with long braids and eyes that sparkled in the dim light. She smiled at him. "You look lonely," she said. "First time here?" Her name was Tommy. She was a model, or so she claimed. She talked to him for an hour, laughing at his jokes, touching his arm when she spoke, making him feel like the most interesting man in the room. When he mentioned his work with Chief Atukong, her eyes lit up with interest. "Chief Atukong? The real estate developer? Wow, you must be a big man." Kelechi puffed up with pride. "I'm his site foreman, 150 estates. Tammy's smile widened. "Impressive, very impressive. You know, I've always wanted to meet someone in construction. Maybe you can give me some advice sometime." She gave him her number before she left. Kelechi stared at the piece of paper like it was made of gold. A beautiful woman had given him her number. A beautiful woman was interested in him. This was what success felt like. The next weeks were a blur of clubs and women and spending. Tommy introduced him to her friends, Shigozi, Funk, Adiz. Each one was more beautiful than the last, more sophisticated, more expensive. They took him to places he had only heard of, restaurants where a single meal cost what he used to spend in a month, boutiques where the prices had no tags because if you had to ask, you couldn't afford it. Kelechi spent money like water. He bought them drinks, dinners, gifts. He paid for their hair, their nails, their lashes. He bought Tommy a phone when she mentioned hers was old. He bought Chigozi a bag when she admired one in a shop window. He took them all to the best places, wanting to show them and himself that he belonged. In return, they gave him attention. They laughed at his jokes, listened to his stories, touched his arm and called him baby. They made him feel important, desired, successful. They were everything he had ever dreamed of, beautiful, sophisticated, classy. They were nothing like Mfon. He didn't think about Mfon during those weeks. Whenever her memory surfaced, the smell of Puff Puff, the warmth of her hand, the kindness in her eyes, he pushed it away. That was the past. This was the present. The present was beautiful women and expensive clubs and the heady feeling of being someone. But late at night, alone in his apartment after the clubs closed and the women went home too, wherever they went, a small voice would whisper in his ear. It asked questions he didn't want to answer. Do they love you? The voice whispered. Or do they love what you can give them? He pushed the voice away. Of course they loved him. Why wouldn't they? He was a successful man now. He deserved their love. The voice persisted. Would they love you if you had nothing? Would they sit with you in a single room in Agingunnel? Would they bring you pepper soup when you're tired? Kelechi buried his head in his pillow and tried not to listen. 1 month after signing his contract, Kelechi sat in his apartment reviewing his bank statements. He had been avoiding this moment, afraid of what he might find, but the money was flowing out so fast, he needed to know where he stood. The numbers hit him like a physical blow. In 1 month he had spent close to what he normally spent in an entire year. His advance was gone. His first month's salary was half gone. The thick wad of cash had dwindled to a thin sheaf of notes. He sat staring at the statements, his mind reeling. How had this happened? He hadn't bought anything permanent, no land, no property, no investments. He had spent it all on clubs and restaurants and women, on fleeting pleasures that left nothing behind but memories and empty pockets. He tried to call Tommy. She didn't answer. He tried Shigozi. No response. Funk's phone rang twice and then went to voicemail. Adiz had blocked him. Panic began to set in. He went to the clubs where he had been a regular, but the bouncers looked at him differently now. The promoters who had once greeted him warmly barely nodded in his direction. The beautiful women who had flocked around him now gathered around other men with thicker wallets and more to spend. A week later, he saw Shigozi at a lounge in VI. He approached her, relief flooding through him. Shigozi, I've been trying to reach you. She looked at him with cold eyes. Kelechi, how are you? I'm good. Listen, I wanted to see you. Maybe we can go somewhere, talk, Kelechi. Let's be honest. Her voice was flat, dismissive. You had money, we had fun. Now the money is slowing down. You understand how these things work, right? I'm not your girlfriend. I'm not your wife. I'm just someone you had fun with. Now the fun is over. He stared at her, unable to speak. She sighed, perhaps feeling a flicker of pity. Look, you're a nice guy, but this is Lagos. A woman like me has needs that cost money. If you can't meet them, someone else will. No hard feelings. She walked away, her hips swaying, her expensive perfume trailing behind her. Kelechi stood there, frozen, watching her join another man at a corner table, a man who looked at her with the same hungry eyes Kelechi had worn just weeks ago. The words echoed in his head. You had money, we had fun. Now the fun is over. He left the lounge in a daze. The Lagos night surrounded him, hot and noisy and indifferent. Danfo buses honked. Street vendors called out their wares. Groups of young people laughed and chatted as they moved from club to club. Life was continuing as it always did, indifferent to his pain. Kelechi found a bench and sat down, his head in his hands. For the first time in weeks, he let himself think, really think. He thought about Tommy, whose eyes never smiled even when her mouth did. He thought about Shigozi, whose laughter had a hollow quality, like an echo in an empty room. He thought about Funk and Adiz and all the others, their beautiful faces and their empty hearts. None of them had ever asked him about his childhood dreams. None had ever cared about the lines on his face or the sadness in his eyes. None had ever offered him comfort when he was tired or worried. They saw only his money, and when the money was threatened, they saw nothing. And then, like a gentle wave washing over a polluted shore, the memory of Mfon returned. Mfon, who gave him extra puff-puff when he could only afford one. Mfon, who sat with him in his darkness and told him, "Your own go better." Mfon, who brought him pepper soup when he was tired, who held his hand when he was sad, who believed in him when he had stopped believing in himself. Mfon, who he had called fat and thrown away like garbage. The tears came then, hot and bitter, streaming down his face in the middle of a busy Lagos street. Passers-by stared but said nothing. In Lagos, a crying man was not so unusual. Everyone had something to cry about. "I'm sorry, Mfon," he whispered into the night. "I'm so sorry." But sorry was not enough. Sorry could not undo the words he had spoken, the hurt he had caused, the love he had destroyed. Sorry was just a word, and words were cheap. He needed to do more than say sorry. He needed to find her. He needed to beg her forgiveness. He needed to spend the rest of his life making up for the worst mistake he had ever made. The question was, would she even want to see him? The sweet poison of gold diggers. The morning after Shigazi's dismissal, Kelechi woke in his Ikeja apartment with a headache that pounded behind his eyes like a desperate tenant demanding rent. The ceiling above him was clean and white, no cracks, no stains, no maps of imaginary countries. It was the ceiling of a man who had arrived, a man who had made it. So why did he feel so empty? He lay still, letting the previous night's events replay in his mind. Shigazi's cold eyes, her flat voice. "You had money, we had fun. Now the fun is over." The words echoed in his skull, each repetition a fresh wound. He had known on some level that these women weren't genuine, but knowing and feeling were different things. Knowing was intellectual, feeling was visceral, and right now he felt like someone had reached into his chest and ripped out his heart. His phone buzzed, a message from Tommy. "Hey baby, hope you slept well. I was thinking about you. Maybe we can meet today? There's this new place in Lekki I've been wanting to try." Kelechi stared at the message. Just yesterday, she hadn't answered his calls. Now suddenly she was thinking about him. He checked his bank balance, still low but not completely empty. She must have heard he was still solvent, still worth mining. He didn't reply. Instead, he got up, showered, and dressed in his best outfit, the one he had bought with his first advance, the one that made him look like he belonged. He needed to go to work. He needed to focus on something other than the gaping hole in his chest. The site was bustling with activity. Workers swarmed like ants, carrying loads, mixing concrete, laying blocks. Kelechi moved among them, checking quality, correcting errors, doing his job. But his heart wasn't in it. His mind kept drifting back to Mfon, to Shigazi's cruel words, to the mess he had made of everything. "Okoro?" Mrs. Williams' sharp voice cut through his reverie. "You day dream or you day work? This corner no level, you know, Siam?" He looked at the wall she was pointing at. She was right. The corner was slightly off, barely noticeable to the untrained eye, but wrong nonetheless. He should have caught it. He always caught things like that. "Sorry, Ma," he mumbled. "I go fix Am." She looked at him sharply. "Something day worry you? You way never miss anything before? Now you day miss corner way even apprentice fit catch?" "Nothing, Ma. Just tired small." She nodded, not entirely convinced, but let it pass. "Fix Am and focus. This job no be playground." Kelechi fixed the corner, forcing himself to concentrate, to push the other thoughts away, but they kept returning, persistent as mosquitoes, buzzing around his consciousness and refusing to be swatted. That evening he found himself back in Victoria Island, not because he wanted to be there, but because he didn't know where else to go. His apartment felt empty and cold. The sites were closed. Ajangunnel was forbidden territory, too full of memories he couldn't face. So he went to the clubs, hoping the noise and lights and beautiful people would fill the void. They didn't. He sat at the bar, nursing a beer, watching the scene unfold around him. The same beautiful women, the same flashy men, the same transactions disguised as romance. He saw a girl he recognized, Funk, one of Shigazi's friends. She was with a new man, an older guy with a gold chain and a confident smile, buying her drinks and laughing. At her jokes, Funk caught his eye and looked away quickly, pretending not to see him. The message was clear. You're yesterday's news, my friend. Move along. Kelechi finished his beer and left. The night air hit him like a wall, hot and thick with humidity. He walked without direction through streets lined with expensive cars and expensive people, feeling more alone than he had ever felt in his single room in Ajangunnel. In Ajangunnel, at least, he had Mfon. Here he had no one. The next day he tried to call Tommy again. This time she answered, Kelechi. Baby, I've been meaning to call you. How are you? I'm okay. Listen, I wanted to see you. Maybe we can have dinner tonight. There was a pause, a long pause, the kind of pause that carries 1,000 unsaid words. Tonight? Tonight is tricky, baby. I have this event I promised to attend. Maybe next week? Next week, the classic brush off. Not a no, but not a yes either. A maybe that meant nothing. Okay, he said quietly. Next week. Great. I'll call you, okay? Take care, baby. She hung up. Kelechi stared at his phone, at the screen that had once glowed with her messages, now dark and silent. He tried Shigozi again. Nothing. Funk. Nothing. A D's. Blocked. In less than a month, he had gone from being surrounded by beautiful women to being completely alone. The speed of it was dizzying. One minute he was on top of the world, the next he was falling through empty space with nothing to grab onto. He threw himself into work, the only thing that still made sense. From dawn to dusk, he was on the sites, checking, correcting, teaching. His eye for detail returned, sharpened by desperation. Mrs. Williams noticed. That's better, she said after one inspection. The Okoro we hired is back. What happened to the other one, the dreamer? He go soon disappear completely, Ma, Kelechi replied. She nodded, satisfied. Good, keep him gone. But when the sites closed and the workers went home, the loneliness returned. Kelechi would sit in his apartment, watching television he didn't see, eating food he didn't taste, waiting for something he couldn't name. One evening he turned on the news. A story caught his attention, a feature about small business owners in Lagos, women who had built successful enterprises from nothing. The camera panned across a busy shop, women packaging snacks, customers lining up, and then for just a moment the camera focused on the owner. Kelechi's heart stopped. It was Mfon. She looked different, thinner, yes, but also brighter, more confident. She wore a smart blouse and wrapper, her hair styled neatly, a smile on her face that reached her eyes. She was talking about her business, about how she had started with a small kiosk and expanded to 3 shops, about her plans to open more. I just believe in hard work, she was saying, her voice warm and familiar. And I believe in God. When people push you down, you get up. When they laugh at you, you keep going. That's the only way. The reporter asked about her inspiration. Mfon paused, and for a moment her face softened. I had someone, she said quietly. Someone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. He showed me that I could be more than what people saw. I will always be grateful to him, even though things didn't work out. Kelechi's eyes filled with tears. She was talking about him. Even after what he had done, she still remembered him with kindness, still spoke of him with gratitude. The segment ended. The news moved on 2 other stories. Kelechi sat frozen, staring at the screen, his heart pounding. She had done it. She had built the empire he had always known she could build, without him, despite him, because of him in some small way, but mostly because of herself, and he had thrown her away. The realization hit him with fresh force. He had been chasing illusions, beautiful women with empty hearts, expensive clubs with no substance, a lifestyle that meant nothing. Meanwhile, the real treasure, the woman of substance, the one who could have built something with him, was out there thriving without him. He had to find her. He had to see her. He had to tell her he was sorry, even if she never forgave him. He owed her that much. The next morning he went to Ajangunnel. The neighborhood hadn't changed. The same crowded streets, the same open gutters, the same noise and chaos. But to Kelechi it felt different. It felt like home, like a place he should never have left. He went to Emphan's old kiosk. It was still there, but a different woman was frying puff puff, a young girl who looked at him with suspicion. When he approached, "Where is Emphan?" he asked. "The woman we used to run this place?" The girl shrugged. "She don't go. Long time. She get shop for market now. Oshodi, I think." Oshodi Market, of course. The news segment had mentioned it. He thanked the girl and headed for Oshodi. Oshodi Market was a different kind of chaos, denser, louder, more intense than Ajangunal. Thousands of traders, thousands of customers, thousands of transactions happening every minute. Kelechi moved through the crowds asking for Emphan's shop, following directions that led him deeper and deeper into the maze. Finally, he found it. It was a proper shop, not a kiosk. Glass display cases filled with snacks, puff puff, buns, chin chin, plantain chips, everything. A sign above the door read Emphan's Delicacies, Catering and Supplies. Inside, women in matching aprons were packaging orders, serving customers, running the business with quiet efficiency, and behind the counter, Emphan. She was bent over some paperwork, her forehead creased in concentration. She had lost more weight since the news segment, the stress of running a growing business, probably. But she still had the same round face, the same kind eyes, the same presence that had always drawn him to her. Kelechi stood at the entrance, unable to move. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure everyone could hear it. What was he going to say? How could he possibly explain? How could he ask for forgiveness after what he had done? A customer bumped into him, muttering an apology, and the movement caught Emphan's attention. She looked up, their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Emphan's face went completely still, not angry, not happy, just still, like a lake on a windless day, hiding unknown depths beneath its surface. Then she looked back, down at her paperwork, as if he wasn't there. Kelechi's heart shattered. He stepped forward into the shop. The women in aprons looked at him curiously, then at Emphan, sensing the tension. One of them started to ask if he needed help, but Emphan held up a hand, stopping her. "Emphan," Kelechi said, his voice cracking. "Please, I need to talk to you." She didn't look up. "We have nothing to talk about, please." "Just 5 minutes. Just give me 5 minutes, and if you still want me to leave after that, I will. I promise." Silence. The women watched, frozen in place. Customers at the counter paused, sensing drama. Finally, slowly, Emphan looked up. Her eyes were unreadable. 5 minutes, she said. "Then you go." She led him to a small office at the back of the shop, a cramped space with a desk, some files, a chair. She didn't offer him the chair. She stood against the wall, arms crossed, waiting. Kelechi stood in the middle of the room, suddenly aware of how small he felt. This woman he had dismissed as not his type, had built an empire. She radiated power and confidence, and he was just a man who had made the worst mistake of his life. "Emphan," he began, "I don't know where to start. I don't know how to say I'm sorry in a way that means anything, but I have to try." She said nothing, just watched him with those unreadable eyes. "Those women I chased, they were there for the money. They didn't love me. They laughed at me when they thought the money was gone. One of them called me a foolish man. She used the same words I used on you." His voice cracked, but he forced himself to continue. "I spent almost a year's salary in 1 month. 1 month, Emphan, on clubs and restaurants and gifts for women who didn't care if I lived or died. And when the money started to run low, they vanished, like smoke, like they never existed." A tear escaped his eye, tracing a path down his cheek. "But you know what the worst part is? The worst part isn't the money. The worst part is that I lost you. I lost the only person who ever truly loved me. The woman who believed in me when I had nothing. The woman who fed me from her own profits. The woman who held my hand in the darkness and told me everything would be okay." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, not caring how pathetic he looked. "You are my type, Emphan. You are the only type that matters. I was just too stupid to see it, too blinded by my own pride and arrogance. I thought I needed someone who looked good on my arm. I didn't realize that I already had someone who was good in my heart." He took a step toward her, then stopped, afraid of pushing too far. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I don't deserve that. I needed you to know that I know what I threw away, I know what I lost, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it." Silence filled the small office. Outside, the noise of the market continued, haggling, shouting, laughter, but in here there was only the sound of Kelechi's ragged breathing and the beating of his heart. Mfon hadn't moved. Her arms were still crossed, her face still unreadable, but something had shifted in her eyes, something soft, something vulnerable, something that looked almost like pain. "You hurt me, Kelechi," she said quietly. "You hurt me in a way I didn't know I could be hurt. I gave you everything, my heart, my trust, my belief, and you threw it away like trash, like I was trash." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Do you know what it felt like? To hear the man I loved say those words? To be told that I wasn't good enough, that I wasn't his type, that he needed someone better? Do you have any idea?" Kelechi nodded, tears streaming down his face. "I'm starting to. Those women made me feel worthless. They made me feel like nothing. And I finally understand that's exactly what I did to you." He fell to his knees, not caring about his dignity, not caring about anything except the woman in front of him. "Mfon, I'm begging you. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I don't deserve another chance. But if there's even a tiny part of you that still remembers the man I used to be, the man who loved you before the money changed him, please, please give me a chance to prove that man still exists, that he can be that man again." Mfon looked at him, kneeling on her office floor, tears and snot running down his face, his expensive clothes wrinkled and disheveled. This was not the confident site foreman who had left her. This was not the big man who thought he was too good for her. This was the Kelechi she had first met, broken, desperate but real. A long moment passed, then another. Finally she spoke. "Get up." He looked at her, hope flickering in his chest. "I said get up. You look ridiculous down there." He stood slowly, wiping his face with his sleeve. Mfon looked at him for a long time, searching his eyes for something, sincerity maybe, or the lack of it. Then she sighed, a long weary sound that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside. "I can't do this today," she said. "I have a business to run. I have orders to fill. I have customers waiting. I can't just. I need time to think." Kelechi nodded quickly. "Of course, I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll wait. I'll wait forever if I have to." She looked at him, and for just a moment the ghost of a smile flickered across her face. "Forever is a long time, Kelechi." "I know, but I've wasted so much time already. A little more waiting won't kill me." She nodded slowly. "Go, I'll call you when I'm ready." He wanted to hug her, to hold her, to never let go, but he knew that would be too much, too soon. So he simply nodded, walked to the door, and paused. "Mfon, thank you for listening. Thank you for not throwing me out immediately. Whatever you decide, I'll accept it, but thank you for this chance." He left, walking through the shop, past the curious women in aprons, past the customers who had overheard parts of the drama, out into the chaos of Oshodi Market. The sun was bright, the noise was overwhelming, but Kelechi felt lighter than he had in months. She hadn't forgiven him, she hadn't taken him back, but she had listened. She had given him 5 minutes. That was more than he deserved. That was enough for now. He walked through the market, through the crowds of traders and customers, through the smell of fried foods and fresh produce, and for the first time in a long time he prayed. "God," he whispered, "if you give me another chance with that woman, I won't waste it. I swear I won't waste it. Just please, please let her find it in her heart to forgive me." The market noise swallowed his prayer, carrying it up into the Lagos sky, where perhaps someone was listening. The waiting game the days after his visit. To Mfon's shop were the longest of Kelechi's life. He had promised to wait, and wait he did, but waiting, he discovered, was its own special kind of torture. Every morning he woke with his phone in his hand, checking for messages that weren't there. Every evening he went to sleep with the phone beside his pillow, willing it to buzz, to light up, to show her name on the screen. Nothing. He threw himself back into work with renewed intensity, partly to distract himself and partly to prove that he was still the man Chief Atukong had hired. Mrs. Williams noticed the change. "Okoro, you day work like man possessed," she remarked one day. "What happened? You find religion or something?" "Something like that, Ma," he replied, not meeting her eyes. The truth was too complicated to explain. How could he tell her that he was working to forget, working to prove himself worthy, working because if he stopped, the emptiness would swallow him whole? He visited Emphan's shop 3 times that first week. Not to talk to her, he respected her request for space, but just to be near. He would stand across the market aisle, watching from a distance as she moved through her shop, directing her workers, serving customers, building her empire. She never saw him, or if she did, she gave no sign. The second week, he reduced his visits to twice. The third week, once, he was trying to give her space, trying not to seem desperate, trying to respect her boundaries, but it was hard, so hard. He started writing her letters, not emails or texts. He wanted something tangible, something she could hold, something that showed he had taken time and care. Every night he would sit at his small desk and pour his heart onto paper. Dear Emphan, I'm writing this because I don't know when you'll be ready to talk, and I need to tell you things even if you're not ready to hear them. I think about you every day, not the way I used to, not with pride and arrogance, but with gratitude. Gratitude for the woman you are, the woman you were to me, the woman you're becoming. I see what you've built. I came to your shop not to bother you, just to see. I'm so proud of you, Emphan. I always knew you could do it. I just wish I had been smart enough to be part of it. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't expect you to take me back, but I need you to know that I see now. I see what I had, I see what I lost, and I will spend the rest of my life regretting it. If you never want to see me again, I'll understand, but if there's even a tiny chance, I'll be here, waiting. Kelechi, he didn't send the letters. He kept them in a drawer, accumulating a stack of unspoken apologies and unrequited love. Maybe one day he would give them to her. Maybe one day she would read them. Maybe a month passed, then 2. Kelechi's work continued to impress. Chifa Tukong's project was moving forward, the estates taking shape across Lagos. Kelechi had been promoted to senior foreman, overseeing multiple sites, training other foremen, becoming the expert that everyone relied on. But none of it mattered. The money piled up in his bank account, but he spent almost nothing. No more clubs, no more expensive restaurants, no more women. He lived simply, saved diligently, and waited. His colleagues noticed the change. Some thought he had become religious. Others thought he was saving for something big. Only Kelechi knew the truth. He was preparing for a future that might never come, but preparing nonetheless. One evening, after a particularly long day on site, he found himself walking through Oshodi Market. He hadn't planned to go there. His feet just carried him as if drawn by some invisible force. The market was closing, traders packing up their goods, the noise fading to a dull murmur. He found himself outside Emphan's shop. It was closed, the metal shutter pulled down, a small padlock securing it. He stood there for a long moment, just looking at the sign, at the space where she spent her days. Kelechi? The voice came from behind him. He turned. It was one of the women from Emphan's shop, the youngest one, the one who had looked at him curiously during his first visit. She was carrying a bag of groceries on her way home. Yes, I'm Kelechi. How are you? The girl looked at him with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. I'm fine. You dey wait for Emphan? She done go home long time. I know. I wasn't. I was just passing by. The girl studied him for a moment, then seemed to reach a decision. You know, she talks about you sometimes. Kelechi's heart leaped. She does? Not much. Just small things. But I can tell. You hurt her. Badly. He nodded, unable to speak. The girl hesitated, then continued. She's different now, you know. Before, when she first came here, she was sad. Very sad. She worked hard, but her eyes were empty. It took months before she started smiling again. Kelechi's eyes burned with unshed tears. I know, I did that to her, but she's better now, stronger. She built all this from nothing. She takes care of us, her workers, like we're family. She's a good woman. The best, Kelechi whispered. The girl looked at him for a long moment. Why you hurt her? She loved you. Everyone could see it. Why you throw that away? It was a simple question, but it cut deep. Kelechi struggled to find words that would make sense, that would explain the inexplicable. Because I was stupid, he finally said. Because money went to my head. Because I forgot what really matters. Because I thought I deserved better, when actually I didn't deserve her at all. The girl nodded slowly, as if this answer satisfied something in her. You know, she never stopped loving you completely. I can tell. When she talks about you even now, there's something in her voice. Pain, yes, but also something else. Hope flickered in Kelechi's chest. What should I do? I've been waiting for her to call to give me a sign, but maybe I should, I don't know, do something. The girl thought for a moment. Don't push. That's the one thing that will make her run. But don't disappear either. Be there. Show her you're still there, still waiting, still the same. Let her see the change, not just hear about it. Kelechi nodded, grateful for the advice. Thank you. I don't even know your name. Blessing, the girl said, smiling slightly. And you're welcome. Just don't hurt her again. If she gives you another chance, don't waste it. She deserves happiness. She does, Kelechi agreed. And I want to be the one to give it to her, if she'll let me. Blessing nodded and continued on her way, leaving Kelechi standing alone. In the darkening market, staring at Mfan's closed shop, holding on to a tiny thread of hope, the next day he did something he hadn't done in months. He went back to Agingunnel. Not to the old haunts, not to the beer parlors or the familiar streets. He went to the place where it had all begun, the spot where Mfan's kiosk used to be. It was still there, but different now. A young woman ran it, someone who didn't know him, didn't know their story. He bought Puff Puff, 5 naira worth, just like the old days. He ate them standing there, letting the taste transport him back to a simpler time, a time before money and pride had poisoned everything. The young woman watched him curiously. You sabi this place before? She asked. Kelechi nodded. Long time. The woman way used to run this place. She was special. She the one way get the big shop for Oshodi now? Mfon? Yes, you know her? The woman shrugged. I know of her. She inspire plenty of us small sellers. Show say you can start from nothing and build something. I day pray to get like her one day. Kelechi smiled. Keep working hard. Keep believing. That's what she did. He finished his puff puff, thanked the woman, and walked away. But he didn't leave Agingunnel. He walked through the neighborhood, seeing it with new eyes. The poverty, yes, but also the resilience. The struggle, but also the hope. This place had shaped him. This place had given him Mfon. He had been in such a hurry to escape it that he had forgotten to be grateful for what it had given him. He found his old room. The building was still there, still run down, still full of people hustling to survive. He stood outside for a long time, remembering the nights he had spent on that mat, the despair that had almost consumed him, the knock on the door that had changed everything. Mfon had knocked on that door. Mfon had brought him pepper soup. Mfon had sat with him in the darkness and told him everything would be okay, and he had repaid her by breaking her heart. The tears came again, but he didn't wipe them away. Let them fall. Let them water the ground where his old self was buried. Let them wash away the last traces of the man he used to be. 3 months after his first visit to Mfon's shop, Kelechi received a message. It was late on a Friday evening. He was sitting in his apartment reviewing site reports when his phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. He almost ignored it. Spam calls were constant, but something made him answer. Hello? Kelechi? His heart stopped that voice. That beautiful, familiar voice. Mfon? A pause. Then, yes, it's me. He couldn't speak. His throat had closed up, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Kelechi? You there? Yes, I'm here. I'm Mfon. I don't know what to say. Another pause. Then, can we meet? Tomorrow? There's somewhere I want to take you. Anywhere, anytime. Just tell me where and when. She gave him an address in Lekki, not a club or restaurant, but something else, something he didn't recognize. Tomorrow a.m., don't be late. I won't, I promise. Mfon, thank you for calling. She didn't reply. The line went dead. Kelechi sat there, phone in hand, staring at the wall. She had called. She wanted to meet. After 3 months of silence, 3 months of waiting, 3 months of hoping against hope, she had finally reached out. He didn't sleep that night. He was too wired, too anxious, too full of emotions he couldn't name. He paced his apartment, rehearsing what he would say, imagining how it would go. Would she forgive him? Would she give him another chance? Or was this goodbye a final closure before she moved on forever? He didn't know. He couldn't know. All he could do was show up, be honest, and hope. The next morning he arrived at the address 30 minutes early. It was a building under construction, a large modern structure in a prime Lekki location. Workers were already on site, moving with purpose, building something impressive. Kelechi stood at the entrance, confused. Why had Mfon brought him here? At exactly a.m., a car pulled up, a small, practical Toyota, nothing flashy. Mfon stepped out. She looked beautiful, not in the flashy, artificial way of the club women, but in a real, grounded way. She wore simple trousers and a blouse, her hair pulled back, her face free of heavy makeup. She looked like herself, the self she had always been, the self he had been too blind to appreciate. Kelechi, she said, walking toward him. Mfon. His voice came out as a whisper. She stopped a few feet away, looking at him. He looked back, drinking her in, memorizing every detail. You came early, she said. I couldn't sleep. I've been waiting for this day for 3 months. She nodded slowly. I know. Blessing told me. She told me you came to the shop, that you stood outside, that you wrote letters you never sent. Kelechi's eyes widened. She told you? Blessing tells me everything. She's like a daughter to me. A small smile played at the corner of Mfon's mouth. She also told me about your conversation, about what you said, about how you've changed. Kelechi swallowed hard. I have changed, Mfon. I know you have no reason to believe me, but I have. Those 3 months of waiting, they taught me more than all the years before. I learned patience. I learned humility. I learned what really matters. Mfon looked at him for a long moment. Then she turned and gestured toward the building. Do you know what this is? Kelechi shook his head. This is my new project, my biggest yet, a catering school and commercial kitchen. I'm training young women, girls from the streets, from the slums, from nowhere to cook, to run businesses, to build their own futures. Kelechi stared at the building, understanding dawning. Mfon, this is incredible. It's what I always wanted, what we used to talk about, remember? Building something that would last, something that would help others. He remembered late nights in her kiosk, dreaming about the future. She had always talked about helping other women, about creating opportunities for those who had none. He had listened, but he hadn't really heard. Now he heard. Mfon, I'm so proud of you. I don't have words. She turned to face him fully. I didn't bring you here to show off, Kelechi. I brought you here because I needed to see something. I needed to see if the man standing before me was the same man who broke my heart or someone new. She paused, searching his face. I've watched you, you know, from a distance. Blessing wasn't the only one watching. I saw you at the shop. I saw you in Ajangunal, at the old kiosk, at your old room. I saw the letters you wrote, even though you never sent them. Kelechi's heart pounded. She had been watching. All this time she had been watching. I needed to know. If the change was real, if it was just words, or if it was something deeper. And I think it might be real. She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell her, not perfume, but something simpler, something that was just her. I'm not ready to forgive you, Kelechi, what you did. It cut deep, deeper than you'll ever know. But I'm willing to try, to start over, slowly, carefully, with no guarantees. Tears streamed down Kelechi's face. Mfon, I don't deserve this. I don't deserve you. But I promise you, I swear to you, I will spend every day of the rest of my life trying to be worthy of this chance. I will never hurt you again. I will never take you for granted again. I will. She put a finger to his lips, stopping the flow of words. Don't promise me forever, Kelechi. Just promise me today. Just show me day by day that you mean what you say. That's all I ask. He nodded, unable to speak through his tears. Mfon looked at him for a long moment, then slowly, tentatively, reached out and took his hand. Come, she said. Let me show you what I'm building, and maybe we can start building something new together. They walked into the unfinished building, hand in hand, two people who had been broken by life and found their way back to each other. The road ahead would not be easy. There was still so much healing to do, so much trust to rebuild. But they had taken the first step, and sometimes in a city as harsh as Lagos, the first step was everything. The shop in the market. Kelechi stood outside a small shop in the Oshodi market, his heart pounding like a Dundon drum at a festival. Through the window he could see Mfon inside, packaging buns into neat plastic bags. She had lost some weight, the stress of running her own business perhaps, but she was still the same Mfon, the same kind face, the same graceful movements, the same quiet dignity. Her shop was clean and organized, with shelves displaying her products: puff puff buns, akara, chin chin, and other snacks. A young girl helped her, probably an apprentice. Business seemed good. Mfon had done what she always did. She had taken her pain and turned it into progress. Kelechi watched her for a long time, too afraid to enter. What if she slammed the door in his face? What if she called the market women to beat him? What if she simply looked at him with those sad eyes and said nothing? He deserved all of that and more, but he had come this far. He couldn't turn back now. He pushed open the door. A small bell tinkled, announcing his presence. Mfon looked up from her packaging, and her face went completely still. Not angry, not happy, just still. Mfon, Kelechi began, his voice cracking like a teenager going through puberty. Mfon, I am so sorry. I was a fool, the biggest fool in all of Lagos. She said nothing, just watched him with those eyes that had seen his worst and loved him anyway. Those girls I chased, they were there for the money. They didn't love me. They laughed at me when they thought the money was gone. One of them called me a foolish man. She used the same words I used on you. He swallowed hard, fighting back tears. You were the only one. You were there when I had nothing. You believed in me. You pushed me. You fed me. You held my hand in the darkness. A tear escaped his eye and traced a path down his cheek. He didn't wipe it away. You are my type, Mfon. You are the only type that matters. I am nothing without you. The money means nothing without you to share it with. Please, please, can you forgive me? Can you come back? The silence stretched between them like the third mainland bridge. Mfon's apprentice looked from one to the other, confused by the drama unfolding in her workplace. For a long, agonizing moment, Mfon just looked at him. Then, slowly, a single tear escaped her own eye and traced a path down her round cheek. She didn't smile, but she didn't turn away. Why should I come back? She asked quietly. You threw me away like rubbish, like I meant nothing, after everything I did for you. Because I was stupid, Kelechi said desperately. Because I let money go to my head. Because I forgot that the only person who ever truly loved me was you. I can't change what I did, Mfon, but I can spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you, if you'll let me. Mfon looked at him for a long time, searching his face for signs of insincerity. Then slowly, almost imperceptibly, she nodded. The long road back. Coming back was not easy. Mfon didn't move in with Kelechi immediately. She wasn't that foolish. She needed to see if the change in him was real or just another temporary madness brought on by loneliness. So they started slowly. Kelechi rented a better apartment in Ajangunal, not in the hotel, not in Victoria Island, but in the neighborhood, where their love had been born. He wanted to be close to her, to prove that he wasn't ashamed of where he came from or who he was. Every day he would visit her shop. He would help her arrange products, carry heavy bags, run errands. He would sit with her during slow periods and talk about his regrets, his realizations, his hopes for the future. He told her about Shigazi's cruel laughter, about the emptiness of the sexy life, about the moment he realized that true beauty is found in the heart, not in the body. Mfon listened. She didn't forgive quickly, that would have been cheap. But she listened, and slowly, carefully, she began to trust again. After 3 months, she agreed to move into his apartment, not as a wife, not yet, but as a partner, as someone willing to give love a second chance. Kelechi was overjoyed. He wanted to celebrate by buying her expensive things: a new wardrobe, gold jewelry, a fancy phone. He wanted to prove that he could provide for her, that she would lack nothing. But Mfon stopped him. Kelechi, she said gently, holding his hand, I didn't come back for your money. I came back for the man who needed me, the man I believed in when he had nothing. If you want to spend, okay, but let us not spend foolishly. You have a contract, but it will finish one day. The money will finish. Then what? Kelechi stared at her. In all his fantasies about wealth, he had never thought about what would happen when the money ran out. He had been so focused on spending, on enjoying, on proving himself, that he had forgotten the most basic principle of wealth: it must be managed. What do you suggest? He asked humbly. Mfon smiled, the first real smile she had given him since their reunion. Sit down. Let me show you something. The Puff Puff Empire. Mfon spread her account books on the table. Kelechi looked at them, expecting simple numbers from a small snack business. What he saw made his jaw drop. Her business was not small. In the months since he had chased her away, Mfon had transformed her kiosk into a mini empire. She now had 3 shops, one in Oshodi, one in Yaba, and one in Surler. She employed 6 women, all of whom she trained personally. Her daily revenue was in the hundreds of thousands. Her monthly profit was more than many salary earners made in a year. All this from Puff Puff? Kelechi asked, amazed. All this from hard work and wise management, Mfon replied. I don't waste money on things I don't need. I reinvest my profits. I expand slowly but surely. I train my workers so they can help me grow. This is how you build something that lasts. She then took his bank statements and went through them with a fine-tooth comb. She didn't shout or complain about how much he had wasted on the gold diggers. She simply calculated, planned, and strategized. This is what we will do, she announced. First, we move you out of that expensive hotel and into a reasonable apartment. Renting is better than throwing money away on hotels. Second, we open a fixed deposit account with a substantial portion of your remaining money. It will earn interest while you work. Third, we invest in my business expand it further, open more shops, maybe even start supplying 2 supermarkets. Your money will work for you, not the other way around. Kelechi listened, humbled and impressed. This was the woman he had called not presentable. This was the woman he had dismissed as not his type. She was a business genius wrapped in an apron, and he had been too blind to see it. Agreed, he said. Everything you say. I trust you. Mfon smiled again, and this time there was warmth in it. Good. Now let's go to work, building together. The next 2 years were the most productive of Kelechi's life. He threw himself into his work as site foreman for Chief Atukong, ensuring that every one of the 150 estates met the highest standards of quality. His reputation grew, other developers started calling, offering contracts, his income multiplied. But this time he didn't let the money go to his head. Every month he sat with Mfon and they reviewed their finances together. They paid themselves first savings and investments before anything else. They expanded Mfon's snack business into a full-fledged catering company that supplied offices and events. They bought 2 plots of land in developing areas. They started building a house, their house, designed by Kelechi himself, finally fulfilling his childhood dream of being an architect, even if informally. The house took shape slowly, carefully, just like their rebuilt relationship. Kelechi oversaw every detail, just as he had done on Chief Atukong's duplex. But this time he wasn't building for a rich man. He was building for his family, for Mfon, for the future they were creating together. Mfon visited the site often, bringing food for the workers, checking on progress. She didn't pretend to understand the technical details, but she understood what the house represented: a foundation, both literal and metaphorical, for a life built on love and mutual respect. You know, Kelechi said one evening as they sat on the incomplete foundation, watching the sunset paint the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple, I used to think that success meant having a beautiful woman on my arm, someone who would make other men jealous, someone who would prove that I had arrived. Mfon said nothing, just leaned against him comfortably. Now I know that success means having someone who will sit with you on an unfinished building and dream about the future, someone who believes in you when you don't believe in yourself, someone who will hold your hand in the darkness and push you toward the light. He turned to look at her, his eyes shining. That's you, Mfon. That's always been you. Mfon smiled and rested her head on his shoulder. I know, Kelechi. I know the weight of love. 5 years, that was how long it had been since Kelechi Okoro sat on a worn-out mat in Ajingunnel, eating a single puff-puff on his 40th birthday and wishing for death. 5 years since Mfon had first handed him extra puff-puff and told him, your own go better. 5 years of struggle, separation, heartbreak, reconciliation, and, ultimately, transformation. Now, on a bright Saturday morning in Lagos, Kelechi stood in front of a magnificent house in a quiet Lekki neighborhood. The house was 3 stories tall with floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the morning sun and threw it back in brilliant flashes. A manicured lawn stretched before it, dotted with flowering plants that Mfon had chosen herself. A fountain bubbled gently in the center of the circular driveway, its waters dancing in the light. This was their house, his and Emphan's, designed by Kelechi himself, finally fulfilling the childhood dream he had carried from his village in Amo State to build houses that touched the sky. Every line, every curve, every finishing touch spoke of the love and labor that had gone into creating it. Behind him, a car pulled into the driveway. A sleek black SUV, not too flashy. Emphan had insisted on practical over showy. The door opened and Emphan stepped out, followed by their 4-year-old daughter, Adana, who immediately began chasing a butterfly across the lawn. Emphan had changed in 5 years, but only in ways that made Kelechi love her more. She had lost some weight. The stress of running an empire would do that to anyone, but she was still the same Emphan, the same round face, the same kind eyes, the same warm smile that had first drawn him to her all those years ago. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her hair styled in a way that framed her face beautifully. She looked like what she was, a successful businesswoman, a loving mother, a woman who had built something from nothing. "Daddy?" Adana shrieked, abandoning her butterfly chase to run toward him on unsteady legs. "Daddy, we went to the shop. I helped count money." Kelechi scooped her up, laughing. "You helped count money? All by yourself?" "I counted to 10. Mama said I did good." "You did excellent, my princess. The best counting in all of Lagos." Adana beamed, then squirmed to be put down so she could resume her butterfly hunt. Kelechi watched her run across the lawn, his heart full to bursting. This child, this beautiful, perfect child, was proof that second chances were possible, proof that broken things could be mended, proof that love, real love, could survive even the worst mistakes. Emphan walked up to him, slipping her arm around his waist. They stood together, watching their daughter play, the morning sun warming their faces. "She's getting big," Emphan said softly. "Too fast. I want to freeze time, keep her this age forever." Emphan laughed, that rich, full laugh that still made his heart skip. "You say that now? Wait until she's a teenager giving us trouble. I'll welcome the trouble, every bit of it." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the neighborhood waking around them. Birds sang, a neighbor's generator hummed to life somewhere. A child laughed, sounding just like Adana. "You know," Kelechi said eventually, "I was thinking this morning about that day, my 40th birthday." Emphan looked at him. "The day you ate one puff alone in your room." He nodded, surprised. "You remember?" "I remember everything, Kelechi, every detail. The sadness in your eyes, the way you held that puff like it was precious, the way you said thank you when I gave you extra." She squeezed his waist. "I knew from that moment you were special. You just didn't know it yet." He turned to look at her, this woman who had seen something in him that no one else had seen, this woman who had believed in him when he didn't believe in himself, this woman who had taken him back after he had broken her heart and helped him build something beautiful from the rubble. "I didn't deserve you then," he said quietly. "I don't deserve you now, but I'm grateful every single day that you gave me a chance, that you saw past my stupidity and my pride and loved me anyway." Emphan smiled, reaching up to touch his face. "You earned it, Kelechi, not with words. Words are cheap. You earned it with every day you showed up. Every day you proved that the change was real. Every day you loved me and Adana and built this life with me." She gestured toward the house, toward the lawn, toward everything they had created. "Together. Look at this. Look at what we built. Not me, not you, us. Together. That's what matters." Later that day, they held a small gathering at the house. Not a party, neither of them was much for parties anymore. Just a few close friends and family gathered to celebrate the official opening of Emphan's new project, a foundation to help young women from disadvantaged backgrounds learn trades and start businesses. The foundation was Emphan's dream, the culmination of everything she had worked toward. It would provide training in catering, hairdressing, tailoring, practical skills that could lift women out of poverty. It would offer small loans to help them start businesses. It would give them the kind of support that Emphan had never had, the kind of support that could change lives. Among the guests was Blessing, the young woman who had been Emphan's first employee and was now her business partner. Blessing had grown into a confident young woman, managing 3 of Emphan's shops and training new employees. She brought her own small daughter, who played with Adana on the lawn. Ah, James was there too, the old mason, who had taught Kelechi everything he knew. He was retired now, living comfortably on a pension that Kelechi had helped him set up. He sat in a shaded corner, drinking palm wine and watching the proceedings with roomy but proud eyes. He done well, that boy, Pa James muttered to anyone who would listen. I tell you, from the first day I see something in him. He go far, and look now, look. Chief Atukong himself made an appearance, arriving in his massive black Mercedes with his entourage. He had become something of a mentor to Kelechi over the years, impressed by the younger man's dedication and skill. He donated a substantial sum to Mfon's foundation, shaking her hand warmly. Your husband is a good man, he told her, but you, Mama Mfon, you are the real force behind him. Never forget that. Mfon smiled and thanked him, but her eyes sought out Kelechi across the lawn. He was playing with Adana, chasing her around the fountain, both of them laughing with pure, uncomplicated joy. This was her real reward. This man, this child, this family they had built, as the sun began to set, painting the Lagos sky in shades of orange and purple. The guests departed one by one. Soon only Kelechi, Mfon, and Adana remained, sitting on the veranda, watching the colors change. Adana had fallen asleep on her mother's lap, exhausted from a day of playing and being adored. Mfon stroked her hair gently, humming a soft lullaby. Kelechi watched them, his heart so full it felt like it might burst. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, the darkness and the light, the despair and the hope, the mistakes and the redemption. He thought about the woman he had been, the man he had become, the family he had been given. Mfon, he said softly. She looked up. Thank you, she smiled, that warm, beautiful smile that had never changed. For what? For everything, for believing in me when I had nothing, for taking me back when I didn't deserve it, for giving me Adana, for building this life with me, for being you. Her eyes glistened with tears, but she didn't let them fall. You don't need to thank me, Kelechi. We built this together, every brick, every dream, every day, I know, but I need to say it anyway. I need you to know, that I understand now what I almost lost, that I will spend every remaining day of my life being grateful for you. Mfon reached out and took his hand, their fingers intertwining like they had done 1,000 times before, like they would do 1,000 times again. I know you know, she said quietly. You show me every day. That's all I ever needed. They sat together in the gathering darkness, watching the last colors fade from the sky there. Daughter sleeping peacefully between them. The noise of Lagos hummed in the distance, but here in this moment there was only peace. Later that night, after Adana had been put to bed, Kelechi and Mfon sat on the balcony of their bedroom, looking out at the city lights. Lagos sprawled before them, vast and chaotic and beautiful, full of millions of stories unfolding simultaneously. Do you ever think about those women? Mfon asked suddenly. The ones you chased? Kelechi shook his head. Never. They were mirages, beautiful from a distance, but nothing real when you got close. He turned to look at her, his eyes soft in the dim light. You want to know what I think about? I think about that first day when you gave me extra puff. I think about the way you smiled like you actually saw me. I think about all the nights you sat with me in my dark room, holding my hand, telling me everything would be okay. He reached out and touched her face gently, reverently. I think about the woman who built an empire from a frying pot, the woman who took me back after I broke her heart, the woman who gave me a daughter and a home and a reason to wake up every morning. Mfon leaned into his touch, her eyes closing. You are not just my type, Mfon. You are my everything, my past, my present, my future. The weight of your love, it's the only weight I ever want to carry. She opened her eyes, and they were bright with tears. Kelechi, I know I say it all the time, but I need you to hear it. I love you, Mfon Okoro, not because of what you do or what you have. I love you because of who you are, the woman who saw a broken man and believed he could be fixed, the woman who never gave up even when giving up would have been easier, the woman who taught me that the true weight of a person is measured not in pounds or kilograms, but in love and loyalty and strength of character. A tear escaped Mfon's eye, tracing a path down her cheek. But she was smiling, that beautiful, radiant smile that had first drawn him to her. I love you too, Kelechi. I loved you when you had nothing. I loved you when you hurt me. I loved you through every day of those 3 months when I was trying to decide if I could trust you again, and I will love you until the day I die." They held each other then, there on the balcony overlooking Lagos, two people who had been broken by life and had somehow found a way to heal together. The city hummed below them, millions of lives continuing their endless dance, but up here in this moment there was only them. The next morning, Kelechi woke early, as he always did. Mfon was still sleeping, her face peaceful, her body warm beside him. He watched her for a long moment, marveling at the miracle of her presence in his life. Then he slipped out of bed, pulled on some clothes, and went to his study. On his desk sat a stack of papers, the final plans for his latest project, not a building this time, but something different, something he had been working on for months. He was writing a book, a memoir really, about his journey from despair to hope, from failure to success, from loneliness to love. He wanted to share his story, not to glorify himself, but to help others who might be where he had been, sitting on a worn-out mat, eating a single puff-puff on their 40th birthday, wishing for death. He wanted them to know that it wasn't over, that there was always hope, that sometimes the person who would save you was right around the corner, frying puff-puff and waiting to believe in you. He picked up his pen and began to write. This is a story about love, not the easy kind, the kind that comes without effort or cost, the hard kind, the kind that survives betrayal and separation and time, the kind that sees past the surface to the heart beneath. This is a story about a woman who weighed more than the world thought she should, and a man who was too blind to see that her weight was the weight of love, heavy enough to anchor him, strong enough to save him. This is a story about second chances, about building something from nothing, about the realization that the true measure of a person is not in their bank account or their appearance, but in their capacity to love and be loved. This is my story. This is Mfon's story. This is our story. And if you're reading this, sitting somewhere in your own darkness, wondering if the light will ever come, let me tell you what Mfon told me all those years ago. Your own go better. Just hold on. Just believe. Just keep showing up. The weight of love is heavy, but it's the only weight worth carrying. Kelechi put down his pen and looked out the window. The sun was rising over Lagos, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Somewhere in the house he heard Mfon stirring, heard Anna's sleepy voice calling for Mama. He smiled. This was his life, this was his family, this was his love, and it was enough, more than enough. It was everything. Thank you for watching The Weight of Love. This story was inspired by the countless unseen heroes of Lagos, the women and men who struggle daily, who love deeply, who believe when belief seems foolish. It is dedicated to everyone who has ever felt invisible, unworthy, or unloved. Your own go better, just hold on. Produced by Your Name, Lagos, Nigeria 2024. If you enjoyed this story, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes the right story at the right time can change everything. Thank you for watching.